IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast live here on a Friday, which means it's Notre Dame football mailbag. I gave you guys a little bit of a heads up on Monday during the Notre Dame recruiting hour that for the time being, at least for this off season, Fridays will be exclusive for the mailbag, which if you guys are originals here, that was
The OGs know, Ryan.
yeah, it's been
The
true.
OGs know what's up. Yes.
We get the weekend kicked off for you guys because this is the best show of the week. Because why? We don't have to plan it. You guys tell us what you want to talk about, and it's fantastic, right? So we already had over 30 questions in the chat before the show even started. You know, the typical thing, guys, real quick, just kind of surveillance here, right? Is that if you have a question, throw an MB before it or a mailbag before it or the little mailbag emoji before it if you would choose to do it that way. So we can distinguish what you guys have to ask us or what is just chatter in the chat. So thank you all for being with us. Hope everybody's having a great Friday and excited to get
it's my favorite show prep day of the week, Ryan. My favorite show prep day of the week because there is none. It's like, what do y'all want to talk about?
Exactly. And I do want to get this out of the way, Brian. On the Monday recruiting show, I was drinking a Celsius energy drink, which is not sponsored by the podcast. Does not sponsor the podcast, but I'm going to be drinking this from time to time, guys. So just chill out, okay? It's just an energy drink. We're all good here. They were accusing me of drinking on the job, and I did not appreciate it. But yeah,
this is a 30-something-year-old dude that's going to bed at like 9 o'clock because he's got two little ones that just run him ragged. So he needs the kick.
I was up past 10 dealing with some potential breaking stuff last night, though. So you got to give me a little bit more there.
Yeah. So there's a ton going on, man. Yeah, Ryan, you were up till the sun went down last night. I didn't know what was going on. I said, holy moly. So this is how I know Ryan goes to bed early. So Ryan calls me. It was about 9:40 last night. And my first thought is like, I answered the phone. I'm like, everything okay? Like, I'm just like waiting on some sort of like, was the wife okay? Are the kids okay? Like, you should be in bed. But we're rocking and rolling. But Ryan, I'm fired up. It's May 10th. Got players are out of school. We've got summer visits coming up, man. We've got breakdowns of the team. We've got knuckleheads that ranking Notre Dame not in their top 36 schools. We got all types of nonsense going on, man. Lots to talk about. I'm ready to dive in. Are you ready to rock and roll, Mr. Roberts? You ready to roll, buddy?
Yeah. Football roll never stops, baby. I'm ready.
Yeah. Yep. Super chats always get moved to the top. And so, again, Ryan said, put the mailbag emoji, put an MB, put mailbag on there, or send a super chat. If you get a super chat, we'll bump you right to the top. And with that, Ryan, I am ready to rock and roll.
Let's do it. Super chats. We had one from AST12321 with super chat. I saw this one beforehand, and I was kind of confused for a split second. I was like, oh, I understand now. So his question is, and thank you so much for the super chat. It's very much appreciated. What does Notre Dame need to do to close the gap with the top 36 teams? Obviously, this is a little bit of a fun question, poking some holes at the 247 power ranking of the top teams.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. This is wonderful, Ryan. Did you see the tweets he had out today?
I didn't see it today. I saw the one where he was talking about new quarterback and stuff at one point.
He said, I listened to it, and he's like in total spin mode now. He was on the 247 CBS Sports show, and he was talking about how, they just had too many questions at quarterback and receiver. And I'm like, bro, you ranked USC 8th. Like, if it's Steve Angeli as Notre Dame's quarterback or Miller Moss as USC's quarterback, I'm still ranking Notre Dame ahead of USC. I mean, Notre Dame beat him by 28 last year with Caleb Williams and Brandon Rice and Taj Washington and Ronald Jones and Marshawn Latimer. And they still, you know what I'm saying? They still hung almost half a hundo on him. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? And so he's like, well, once Riley Leonard gets back to being healthy, they'll be in my top 10. Look, bro, Riley Leonard should not be a guy that makes you go from top 10 to not top 40. Like, that's absurd. If USC, listen, Ryan, if USC can go from unranked to number 8 with Miller Moss or the kid from UNLV at quarterback after Caleb Williams, then it shouldn't look, man, take the 4 names of the Notre Dame quarterbacks, write them on a piece of paper, crumple them up, put them in a hat, pull a name out of a hat and say that's going to be the starter, and they should still rank Notre Dame ahead of USC.
Yeah.
Like, so the whole thing,
also
Nebraska, Iowa State, Kansas, Riley Leonard's got to prove he can stay healthy. And Jaylon Daniels does it. Connor Wegman's played 9 games in his career, Ryan. 9 games.
Yep.
He's more proven to you that you're going to have A&M 17th and Notre Dame not even ahead of Boise State. Bro, just admit
Iowa State also has something called
forgot
Rocco
what Notre Dame
Becht
had.
playing quarterback. So
What's
yeah,
that?
I said Iowa State also has something called a Rocco Becht playing quarterback for them, but obviously shade there, but it's funny.
Yes.
It's also it's such a bad backtrack too because it's May. So saying the injury bug thing in May, months before the season started, like you have no idea. It's just,
if he were going to say, okay, this is a ranking of where teams are today. Okay,
right.
fine. That's silly. That's clickbait, but fine. But he starts
You're also
talking
not a
about,
doctor. You're not a doctor. It's just
well, the other thing too, though, Ryan, is that's fine, but you did not apply that same strategy across the board. Because doesn't Connor Wegman have to show that he can come back from injury? Who is Ohio State's quarterback going to be right now? Do we know the answer to that? Do we know if Travion Henderson's going to be 100% healthy? I mean, there's teams across the country that have guys coming back from injuries right now. Well, they got new players and new this. I'm like, you're telling me that Notre Dame had more losses? He's like, Notre Dame lost a lot from last year. I'm like, no, they didn't. Again, you're showing your you know what right now. Notre Dame lost good players. They didn't lose a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame has over 20 guys coming back on their team this year, Ryan, that have at least 2 or 3 starts last year. 20, over 20.
Yep.
So don't talk to me about, well, just admit, hey man, look, I did. And Ryan, you and I'm sure you and I have both done this. I'm sure you've done a mock draft where you just, forgot to put that guy on there, or a top 25 or something. I've done that because I'll do a weekly Irish breakdown. So, you know what? I completely forgot to put that team in there. Just that's my fault. I overlooked it because the way I do my top 25s is I rank the teams in each conference and then just go through and take the next best team from wherever, I think that. And so he probably just forgot to look at the independents. Just, hey, my bad. I'm going to put a new list out or just say I'd have had him 17th. But you double down on stupid and that's what you get. But I love the super chat because, that was absolutely hilarious. But like I put an article up, or I put one of the shows I did about Notre Dame closing a gap, and somebody responded like, you're talking about closing the gap on Iowa State, Nebraska, right? And I was like, that's such a great response. Like, I love our fans so much sometimes. It's just like, that was a phenomenal response.
Yeah. It's I saw the top 30 or whatever listing that they had on Twitter, and I was just like, all right, I don't have any time for this.
And it was a pretty dumb list. Even like, it wasn't just the Notre Dame part was wrong. There's a lot in there that was jacked up. You're like, come on, dude. Come on. Come on, man.
Well, the fighting Rocco Becks are gonna be really good this year, apparently, under Matt Campbell. So that's what's up.
Ridiculous. We got another super chat, Ryan, from Pete Weber.
Pete Weber, not bowling, here with us today. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. What is every IB staff and members' most valuable piece of Notre Dame memorabilia that they own? Well, I guess you're asking everyone. So people in the chat, put it down. Throw out your most memorable, your most notable Notre Dame memorabilia into the chat as well. Have some fun here. Have some fun. I don't have anything crazy. I have a few jerseys. I have a nice starter jacket, Notre Dame wise. I don't have any like autographs or anything. So for like people that don't know me, like too much about my fandom, I had always been a Notre Dame fan. I can't remember a day where I wasn't a Notre Dame fan, but when I got to the age where I really started to understand football deeply, I guess, and really started to be like a true fan, I was enamored with Carlisle Holiday, like enamored.
Oh
with him.
yeah.
I remember his recruitment and everything, and I'm like, oh, who's that guy? That's cool. So I actually got a number 7 Notre Dame jersey. It was the first piece of Notre Dame memorabilia I ever got because of Carlisle Holiday. So I'll go number 7 Notre Dame jersey because of Carlisle.
Ryan, I have an interesting take on Carlisle Holiday. I have said this before. If Carlisle Holiday would have played for Lou Holtz instead of Bob Davie and Ty Willingham, he would have gone down as an all-time great at Notre Dame. Like if he would have got to play in the offense that Jarius Jackson and Tony Rice played in, he'd have been a star. Yep. And that because that was such a wild class because Jared Clark was a quarterback in that class. You remember him, played tight end, really athletic, big guy. And then Matt LaVecchio ends up being the one starting for them as a true freshman. And it was at 99, 2000. So that was but I remember watching him out of San Antonio, and I'm like, this guy is a dude. Yes. He was a dude, but they just never built around his skill set. They tried to turn him into I don't know what the heck they tried to turn. And he had like 3 different coordinators.
He was like a gadget dude at one point.
Yeah.
Like he was just, he actually, great stats. So when Brett Favre broke the completion record in the National Football League, most career completions, it was actually to Carlisle Holiday. He was the receiver that caught that pass from him. So Yeah. I always kind of wonder if Carlisle would have played in like today's game. Forget about quarterback for a second. If he would have been like the kind of the gadget dynamic space dude, like how he would have done in today's game too, even
Like a,
outside of
a
the
better
quarterback
version
position.
of K. Thompson from a couple years ago at Virginia.
Yeah.
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 Because he can move, man. He can move. Yep.
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, you're right. He played wide receiver in the NFL for a while. That's how athletic he
Yeah.
was. So yeah,
And he,
no
and he
doubt.
never even played it. Like, they were just like, all right, go try to play wide receiver. And he made team for a few years as a wide receiver. So, yep.
I don't really have a lot of honestly. The coolest memorabilia I have is stuff that people have sent me. There was one of the members had asked for my PO box number one time, and I gave it to him, and he sent me like a little megaphone from the 1988 season and some newspaper clippings from when Notre Dame won the title and like a banner and somebody sent me a Notre Dame helmet that was like those little ones like this. It's not this
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
because this one has stuff in it, but like one like this
Hmm. Hmm.
that has was signed by a Notre Dame player. So
Nice.
it's like Barry Gallup or something like that, which is hilarious. But it meant a lot to me because someone took the time to say, "Hey, I want to send this to him," and
Right.
I appreciate that. But I've
Well,
never been as an adult, I've never been a huge memorabilia guy. I mean, I did
yeah.
I've never bought something that was autographed. I remember as a
Hmm.
kid, I like to go get autographs from Major League when we go to Reds games and stuff. But I kind of got out of that in my teens where I really cared about
Not,
that kind of stuff.
not a Notre Dame thing specifically, but I did get my dad a throwback Nick Bonacani jersey maybe like 10 years
Nice,
ago. Obviously, he went to Notre Dame,
nice.
so
Yeah,
that's one.
I got my
Yeah.
dad a John Riggins jersey, Redskins
Nice.
jersey. So
Yeah.
yeah, same thing. I was like, my dad liked Riggo growing up as a kid. So yeah, it was the
My
Maroon.
dad did not like Riggins because of that one
No,
play where he
no,
ran the one safety over for Miami and stiff armed
yeah,
it to the
in the
ground
Super
for a
Bowl.
six for
Yeah,
6. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh man.
yeah.
Well, and
So yeah,
shout out to the chat too, because one of my greatest memorabilia I ever got from Notre Dame Stadium was there was this nice young man, older man actually, who gave me a thing of salty Virginia peanuts, and it was
nice.
yeah.
Yes,
So there we go. Yeah.
yeah. He actually sent another can. He brought another can to a game, Ryan, where it was he brought one for like you and some other guys, and I gave one to
Yep.
Vince and one to Sean. But I said, "Sorry, Salty, I'm not shipping this out to Ryan. I'm just going to go ahead and eat this myself." So he actually tried to get you another, but that got
Nice.
consumed in the Driscoll household, my friend. So
That's
that's
fine.
Ryan's fault. Ryan should have came to some of the games,
Yeah,
So
little too salty anyway for my
yeah,
tastes. So.
yeah. There you go. So got a couple more super chats, Ryan. Let's keep rolling.
All right. Aiden Benami, what's up, Aiden? Lost my dog and best friend this morning. I know how much IB loves dogs. No better way to heal than Friday mailbag. Love to all IB Nation. Sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, man. I'm really sorry to hear that, man. Yeah, I love dogs, and we actually took Sadie to the vet the other day, and they found a couple things that they want to remove that they're concerned about. So I feel your pain, man, and we'll be praying for you. And yeah, that's a major bummer. I'm curious how long you had them, and but yeah, we'll be praying for you, man. But yeah, we're glad to be here for you, though. Right? I mean, that's the thing that we love about this community, Ryan. Is it's not just it. I mean, we're here to talk Notre Dame football, right? But we do like to consider ourselves a family and a community where we look out for each other. We pray for each other. We encourage each other, and sometimes bust each other's chops and all that. But hey, man, I'm praying for you, buddy. I'm sorry to hear that, but we're glad you're with us, and we'll try to keep this fun and lively and all that to help you have some fun and maybe take your mind off of it at least just for a little bit, for sure.
Yep.
And Iden has young kids, so I'm sure that makes it even harder as a dad to have to deal with that and explain that to the kids. And I can only imagine what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to that conversation. My dog's 10 and my girls
Oh
love
yeah.
him, love her.
Yeah.
So that would be
Yeah.
not the easiest thing to explain of what happened to the dog, because especially
Yeah.
because when they're younger, they don't understand the concept of death, obviously.
Right.
So it's a little
Right.
tough to explain. Yeah.
And I personally wouldn't know how to do that. So
Yeah.
more props to y'all that have to do those things. So
She
we
went to
appreciate you, man.
she went to the dog park in the sky, man. That's all.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
All right, we got Andy Milton fan. What's up, Nathan? What house hold pet best describes Brian Kelly and why? I have an easy one for that one.
Go ahead.
I mean, can you have a cockroach as a pet? Just kidding. That wasn't actually my answer, but that may have actually been my answer. If you could have a cockroach for a pet, my answer is, and I had a really bad experience when I was young. My grandparents had a bunch of chihuahuas. Okay, they had a bunch of chihuahuas, and they were the ones that would hide under the couch and they would nip at your heels the minute that you walked past them. Okay, the worst thing about chihuahuas, they're super tiny. They don't shut up. They keep yapping, and also everyone that loves chihuahuas and that is a pet owner of a chihuahua feels they need to make excuses for that chihuahua at all times. Oh no, he's really friendly, I promise. So he just nipped my heels and he just keeps yelling
Yeah.
at me, right? So yes, Brian Kelly, chihuahua.
That I'm sorry, I'm just having some flashbacks to a conversation that we had on the podcast once with Vince about chihuahuas, and just your ordinary Joe will know what I'm talking about.
Chihuahuas
I
are
would
just mean
say,
dogs, man. Just mean
yeah,
dogs. They're not
I,
nice.
I don't know, a cat, because when they want to be, they're great and they're good and they're whatever, but then but you can't trust them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
They
don't know.
like themselves a lot
I
and they
don't
cough
I don't
up
know that
and
I'd ever want to disrespect I don't know that I'd ever want to disrespect a household pet that way. But yeah, somebody said a guinea pig. It's cool at first, but the lifespan of said coolness is not long at all. Oh goodness gracious!
what's a very
We have a super
overrated house pet? I think that's a hermit crab.
cat,
Hermit crab.
hermit
They're
crab.
there. They, you just don't really know why they're there, but yeah.
NH
I don't
says I love it. I love cats, but yes, they can be a-holes.
They
Yes, they
can. Oh,
can.
I'm also
Yes,
allergic
they
to
can.
cats, so me and cats don't get along too
Okay.
well. But
There you
yeah,
go. So that might make it even more fitting for you, Ryan.
yep.
We have a super chat here from Mark One. Any news on Benjamin Morrison? No, Mark, we're not going to get any news on Benjamin until we get closer to the season. I know that he does have. I mean, we've seen him a couple times in different things where he doesn't have the sling on, so
Which is good.
we
Which is
haven't gotten
positive. Yeah.
anything. What's that? Yeah, it's
Which is
yeah.
positive. I said that he doesn't have to sling on. Yep.
Yeah, so I can't tell you what's going on, when he's going to be back. It could be fall camp, but we just don't know. And I do promise you this: as soon as I get any definitive word, I promise you we will talk about it. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Salty Virginia Peanut says, "Is squirrel one of Brian's pets?" No.
Mhm.
And if I couldn't have squirrels, because squirrels and rabbits my dogs hunt them and try to attack them every time they're in our
I,
backyard.
I don't think people have squirrels for pets, do they? I've never
I
seen it.
have
Maybe
no,
like
I have never
a
heard of it.
flying. I think I've seen someone have a flying squirrel, but not a regular squirrel. They're just yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah.
look, people, all types of weird pets. People have all types of weird pets. So I'm sure. I did see something cool yesterday on Twitter, though, that I thought was awesome. Because I do think, in all seriousness, like, animals are very fascinating creatures. And I truly believe God made some of them to be, companions. So, like, there's dogs can be trained to do all types of things. There's this lady who's an epileptic, and she'll have seizures, and the dog can sense when she's about to have a seizure, and she knows to just go down, and the dog will dive under her head, and she bangs her head up against the dog. Like, it's amazing how animals are like that. But I saw something on Twitter today where this deaf guy had a cat, and the cat realized that it could meow and it didn't hear it, so the cat started making symbols, and so the cat would go to its mouth when it wanted food. I thought that was fascinating. Over time it learned that, like, hey, I want food. And I just, man, it's amazing. But especially dogs, the things that they can be trained for, and
Oh yeah.
and
They're
just
like
the way
they're like
that they were created. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they're like service dogs for like so many different types of things. I mean, obviously we
Yeah.
think of them as like police dogs and stuff, but like people have them for anxiety and
Yeah.
blindness and all different types of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We thought about at some point in time, but just she's had some issues. But we thought at one point in time about, taking Sadie over to the children's hospital and just volunteering over there. Cause, like, kids love Sadie because she's super cuddly and lovable. She loves to be pet. She
Mhm.
doesn't bark at people. And every time a kid sees her, they immediately want to start saying, like, "Where's her leg? Where's her leg?" And then we can share the story, and it's kind of uplifting and all that. But yeah,
Yep.
dogs are truly amazing creatures, man. They really are. They really are.
My
Yeah.
my daughter Juliet, every time we see a dog that has a vest on, she'll just be like, "Mommy, you can't talk to them. They're working right now." I'm like, "You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Jules. You're not wrong at all about that. Good
She's a
job.
sharp kid, man. She really
Yeah.
is a sharp kid. I love it. I love it. All right, we got another super chat down here, Ryan, from Matt 2011 GT.
Matt, thank you so much, man. Drinking money for Ryan, JK. How important is the on-field performance this year? Feel like recruiting in a few spots is losing some of the initial Marcus Freeman era steam.
I'm going to answer that twofold, Ryan, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this as well. Number one, this is a huge year for Notre Dame. Now, I'm
Yes.
not someone that is a, such and such or bust season for Marcus Freeman. I don't believe that to be true, but I do think it's very important. This is the year where we start to have things solidified one way or the other, as this is Marcus Freeman being good, or this is something to be concerned about because these things are still happening in year 3. That's a problem. But I don't think it's a such and such or bust season. But I do think this team needs to make another jump. And I would argue, Ryan, not that it's playoffs or bust, because what does that mean? Playoffs or bust? Does that mean you're going to fire him if they don't make the playoffs? I don't know what that means. But if you're defining it as if they don't make the playoff, it's a disappointing season, flat out agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. Does it mean that Marcus Freeman's never going to win at Notre Dame? It does not. But it does mean we should start having some pretty conversations about, he's got some things to prove. So that's number one. Number two, feel like recruiting in a few spots is losing some of the initial Freeman era steam. I don't agree with that. I think because what fans don't understand about recruiting, Ryan, is, and there are things going on with this class that you and I don't necessarily agree with. And there's some players that I don't particularly think were great takes. There's some players, and you do. Some players that I think were good takes, maybe you don't, and some that we just both are like, why take him now? You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But that's always going to be true if we're having honest conversations about recruiting. There's always going to be some of those things. I don't agree that they're losing some of the early steam because recruiting is cyclical. You're never going to just be the same exact way every single class. Perfect example, cornerback recruiting. The first 2 classes I thought were excellent. Full classes. You've got the Morrison Mickey class. You've got the Gray Bell class. Brilliant. The Leonard Moore Carson Hobbs class is good, but I wouldn't say that it's as good as the first 2, in my opinion.
Sure.
I don't think either one of those guys are as good as Benjamin Morrison or Christian Gray of what I thought they were coming out of high school. So it's not like I'm retroactively putting Benjamin Morrison as an All-American, but we had him ranked in the top 350 like everybody else. That's different. You and I both were super high on Benjamin Morrison coming out of high school. So I'm talking about where I valued him. But I don't like that class. But then what do they do the next year? They've got Dallas Golden committed. They've got Cree Thomas committed, and they're on the verge of another great class. It's going to have some ups and downs where maybe one year is not perceived as strong as you think. Receiver recruiting is a step back. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of that is Notre Dame induced issues that they had. Some of it is the issues with the previous receivers coach where they went months where basically they weren't really recruiting the position because
timing of the new hire coming in, and there's a lot of stuff.
There's all types of things. That doesn't make it okay. These aren't justifications or excuses, but it's saying let's not make any big picture losing steam arguments about that. And I don't know where you'd say they're not losing steam at quarterback. You say, oh, they're losing steam at running back. No, they're not. They made a choice in this class.
So they wanted.
It's a down year nationally running back wise. And they made the decision of these are kids that have ability, but they're going to be program guys as well. Daniel Anderson's not going to, Ryan, you know this, you know him a lot better than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Anderson's not going to come to Notre Dame as a freshman, be mad that he's not getting 50 carries and 100 carries and be like, I'm out. He's going to be that guy that's like, I'm going to be a great teammate. Freshman year, you need to be on scout team. I'm going to give them a great look every week. My time will come. And someday he's either going to be better than some people think, or he's going to be a great backup, or he'll get over-recruited by somebody else. But he's a great program guy to have. I know you and I are both very high on what he brings to the table, while also admitting he's not Keidron Young. He's not Aeneas Williams. He's not Jeremiah Love. But when you're building a team, you need guys like that. They made a choice. So it's not losing steam. It's building a roster. There's got to be a year every couple years where you say, we need to make sure we're getting some program guys. And that's what they did last year, or in this cycle with Daniel Anderson and Justin Thurman. So I don't think they're losing steam there. They're not losing steam at tight end. They're not losing steam on the offensive line. They're not losing steam on the defensive line because the issues happening now have been happening from the moment that the coach got here. They're not losing steam at linebacker. They're not losing steam at cornerback, and they're not losing steam at safety. So my question would be, where are they losing steam? And you say, oh, receiver, fair, based on what they've done the last 2 years of receiver. I think that's fair, Ryan, to say that. But I don't know that that's losing steam because of Freeman. I think there's other factors involved. Go ahead, Ryan. I went on a lot.
No, you're fine. I think that it's two positions that are causing Notre Dame fans to question some parts of recruiting. And I think you mentioned both of them partly there, right? Wide receiver, just simply, again, I think that 2026 is going to be my 100% evaluation of Mike Brown as a recruiter. I don't know if I've gotten a full fair evaluation of him. I don't think so. Because one, there was already a board created when he got here, right? And then there was an evaluation period. And then for a couple guys, hey man, like he's coming in late in their recruitment, and it might just be it might not be the easiest thing to just kind of pick that up and then just continue forward, that type of thing, right? So I think that partly that is there. I think also we talked about the make or break year. I do think it's not a make or break year, but I think it's a huge year for the wide receiver room at Notre Dame. Like they need to show that they can develop that position a lot better because they haven't the last few years, right? So you need to see that wide receiver position just in general on the field take a nice step forward. And then the defensive line recruiting, it's not that I want to phrase this the best way I can. Notre Dame isn't recruiting poorly on the defensive line. I think that they have made a couple weird decisions on the defensive line is the best way to phrase it, right? I think that for the most part, Notre Dame has gotten
more of an evaluation problem, which is what you said to me. It's more of an evaluation concerns than an
evaluation
recruiting concern.
Right. Because I feel like most of the players that they try to get in with, they do gain some level of traction with, right? I mean, they had opportunities and we could always talk about the misses or the misevaluations, right? But I don't think it's wow, that defensive lineman isn't even talking to Notre Dame because he has no level of interest. Like I haven't seen that the last couple of years, right? It's just about who are you prioritizing early and who are you taking early and who are you choosing not to push for in evaluation problems, right? So I think those two positions are kind of making us sour on recruiting a little bit. But for the most part, again, like people, someone on the board or maybe on Twitter said it was like, oh, this is just a typical Brian Kelly class. I'm just like, brother, no, it's not. Like, no, it's not. It's just
some of you have a very misguided view of what Brian Kelly's recruiting classes look like. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's literally, Ryan, not a single metric outside of class rankings that you can point to and think that it's even close. And I've pointed out the flaws in looking at the class ranking. It's not even close. Look, here's the reality. There are some people this is a response I got from someone to a show that I did the other day, Ryan, because like you nailed the receiver thing. I talked about that in the show the other day. Like this is a huge year for them at receiver. You want to start getting better players? Why is Notre Dame all of a sudden a program to watch with top corners? Why?
Because they've been playing
because of what Mike Mickens has done. All right, the product on if there's no Cam Hart, no Benjamin Morris in the last couple of years, Christian Gray doesn't show it. Do you really think some of these kids are going to be as interested in their name? Maybe. Right. I don't think so. Yeah. Right. The product on the field's got to get there. Why do recruits, offensive linemen, and tight ends love coming to Notre Dame? Ryan, there was a time not that long ago that Notre Dame struggled to get top offensive linemen. Go back and look how the battle it was before Harry Hiestand got. There were some years where it was good, some years where it wasn't very good. But it was a consistent battle. Well, why is it easier now for them at tight end and offensive line? Because of the track record of success. And as I pointed out, like y'all have to remember, the last time that Notre Dame had a first-round draft pick in the first a wide receiver, most of these kids were closer to elementary school than they were high school. And some of the 26 kids were in elementary school the last time Notre Dame had that.
And unfortunately, Will Fuller had flashes in the NFL, but he didn't have a long, successful career in the NFL either, right? I mean, it may have been different if Will Fuller's still playing in the NFL and he's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons, he made a couple Pro Bowls like that, then you'd be able to look at him and use him as a true beacon. But unless you saw him smoke Adoree Jackson in that game, right? Unless you saw him catch the game winner against Virginia, unless you saw those things, doesn't matter to you. You didn't see him, you know? And so, yeah,
even if you did see it, the lack of consistency in producing. And just real quick, Matt, 2011 GT, we're not saying you said it's like Kelly's class. Ryan was referring to something that somebody else had said. So your question was a good question. I actually like the question. I don't necessarily agree with the premise of the second part of it, but it's a very fair question. I mean, if we're not willing to ask those questions when there is a down year, that's how we start getting into justifying and accepting mediocrity, right?
Right.
Like that's the thing. So, but we also have to be willing to objectively look and say, well, you may disagree, because here's what we're not saying. We're not saying that you have to agree with the decision they made at running back. You can have you can say, hey, look, I don't care. You're Notre Dame. You should recruit top guys every year. Okay, that's a fair conversation if you want to have that. As someone who looks at the importance of team building, not just winning recruiting rankings, I would push back on a little bit. But that's a fair conversation to have. Ryan and I have had conversations about things, strategies they've made where, I don't necessarily agree with it. He may agree with it. He doesn't agree with it. I do, or we both don't. But that's different than saying they're losing steam. That's all I'm trying to say is there's a difference between losing steam and making decisions. Like, for example, Notre Dame made a decision not to push for Dalen McCutcheon. They made a decision not to push for Cooper Perry. I question that decision. I don't know that they're losing steam because the guys like Derek Meadows are guys they've had a problem recruiting for a while. Taylor types have been hit or miss. They get a Cam Williams, but they missed out on Caleb Brown. They've missed out on plenty of those type of guys, right? So it's not losing steam. It's just I think there were some evaluation concerns on top of the position change, the coaching change, the fact that the previous position coach wasn't really recruiting people. I mean, it was Chancey Stuckey that decided not to go recruit Cooper Perry. That was his decision. And by the time the new coach came in, even if he wanted to get involved there, Ryan, that ship had sailed, in my opinion.
A kid whose grandfather went to Notre Dame, who is a top 100 player. Oh my gosh.
Who's going to Oregon? Man. Oregon thinks he can play for them, but so I mean, whatever.
Oregon, who should also be a pretty dang good team, by the way. This next
who passed for like 4,500 yards last year, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are the different things, Ryan, that you could say, hey, look, I don't agree with the strategy, but I don't think one down year at a position, even if it is, even if there isn't justifications for why they're down, I don't think one down year should make us say they're losing steam. It should, however, perk our attention. Okay, well, let's see what they do in 26. Right? Like cornerback was one. Like, okay, I like Carson Hobbs. I like Leonard Moore. I didn't have either one of those guys as top 100 guys. I don't think you did either as top 100 guys. Did you have Carson or Leonard? No. We both liked him like top 150-ish kind of guys. I still say Leonard probably jumps into the top 100 if he wasn't banged up as a senior. I kind of thought he was on that trajectory. It's possible. He did get banged up. But neither of them were as good as Christian Gray. So you could kind of look and say, okay, well, that's a bit of a down year. And then if they'd have followed it up this year and not got Dallas Golden and not got Mark Zachary or not got Tristan Haynes and not got Jameer Joseph and not got, Chuck McDonald and Devin Williams, like all the guys they liked and missed out on all those and then settled for some, nice gritty kid that ran well at Irish Invasion, then you can say, yeah, okay, this is now 2 years in a row. It hasn't lived up to the standard. So maybe those 2 great years in a row were anomalies, because that can happen too. Because sometimes you can overrate a couple good years because, like at receiver, they kind of caught some breaks with that 23 and 24 classes because Chancey Stuckey was already recruiting those guys at Baylor because they were from Texas, because Braylon James and Jaden Greathouse are very high academic kids that are not normal for kids that are as good as they are. Let's be honest about that. Most kids that are big-time receivers are not like Jaden Greathouse. They're just not. They're not like Cam Williams. They're more like Taylor Taylor. That's not a bad thing. That's not a knock on Taylor Taylor. That says Taylor Taylor cares about academics, but he's putting more value on, I want to go somewhere that has a proven track record of football. And I've had somebody say, well, how could he say Georgia? And I made this point the other day, Ryan. Well, Georgia's been a significantly better throwing team than Notre Dame the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
Significant.
Yeah. And all they had to do is point to the 2021 wide receiver group and be like, guys, like all those kids are going to be in the NFL, like every single one of them. So like, if you want to do that, I mean, you could just be like, hey, that team had, George Pickens and Adonai Mitchell and Lad McConkey and what was number 3 that Jermaine Burton. And I mean, they had a lot of guys that are going to be playing in the NFL. So yes, it's a attractive position in that sense. And yes, Matt, I want you to understand, Brian said this already. I love you. Okay. If this was Tommy Guns was probably the one that said it on the message board about, being bad recruiting or something. So, Tommy, you stink. Matt, you're awesome.
Be nice to Tommy, even though I had
I
to
am
go
nice to
off on him
Tommy.
yesterday a little bit.
Oh, did
All
you?
right, got a couple more down here from my guy Tyler Evans.
Tyler, what's up, man? Thank you so much for super chat. Appreciate it. With conference realignment, which teams in their new conferences will sink to the bottom and which one will rise to the top? Are we talking about teams coming in or are we saying in
Yeah,
general?
let's
Okay.
say teams coming in. So which teams in their new conference will sink to the bottom?
Yep.
Well, I think Stanford is going to quickly go to the bottom of the ACC. I
Probably.
think they're just going to be
Probably.
bad no matter what conference they're in. Cal, I don't know about. That's going to be an interesting one because they can lose to some teams, win some others. I could see them kind of basically being where they've been, a
Yep.
borderline top five, borderline 500 team that is 5-7, 6-6,
Yep.
7-5.
Actually,
Like
Cal actually got a couple decent transfers in for this season, which was
yeah,
kind of interesting.
especially
Like, I mean, they
receiver.
obviously got, yeah, I mean, they obviously got Tobias, but I was looking at, I forget who they got an interesting quarterback. I can't remember who they got, but they've gotten some guys where I'm just like, oh, okay, that might be a decent Cal team. Might be all right. I don't
I
know.
thought they got another good receiver the other day, Ryan.
They may have.
Let me look
They
this
still
up
got.
because
They got.
I thought
They still got. Oh no, J. Michael Sturdivant's at UCLA now. I was going to say him,
yeah, he
but yeah,
transferred
still Cal.
last year. Yeah, let me go
Yep.
down because I thought they picked up another kid recently. They did okay. They're surprisingly okay in the portal. They got the CJ Harris kid from Ohio, University of Ohio. Oh, that's what it
Yep.
was. It was Keon Grays, the kid from Ohio State that I liked, the
Oh, the
kid from
corner,
Arizona. Yep,
the
yep,
D
that's what
back,
they got.
right? DB.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. No, he's a receiver. He's a receiver.
Oh, Graves is receiver.
Keon
Oh,
Grays, yeah, kid from Arizona that they got, who I liked out of high school. Just was buried on a deep depth chart. It's a good pickup. They got
gotcha.
Ryan Yates out of LSU, who's a good player.
Yeah.
I mean, they picked up some nice players through the portal. I mean, they got Mikey Matthews, the receiver from Utah. They also got
Yeah.
him to come in, who's a
Hmm.
decent player. Kadarius Callaway from Old Dominion, who's a good running back. He's transferred in. They got Tobias. He's a good player. Are you familiar with Marcus Harris from Idaho? Ryan, the corner.
Oh yeah, the
You know what I'm
corner.
talking
Yeah,
about?
he was an all
Yep.
American corner at Idaho.
He
Yep.
transferred in there, and then they got Aiden Keanaaina, who I think can give them, some snaps up the middle. So they had a good portal session. Good
Yeah.
portal year in my opinion. So, but again, I still think there's too many holes for them to like rise to the top of the ACC, but I don't see them bottoming out. I think SMU will be competitive in the ACC. Competitive meaning like they'll still be a quality team, bowl team. I'm not like they're going to win it like they did when they were in the AAC, but I think they'll
Right.
be a bowl team. I think Stanford's going to quickly go down.
Yeah.
And so so I look at them. Big Ten.
Washington might
UC,
have a rough one this year, man.
yeah,
Washington might have a rough one this year.
yeah. They're not. I don't know that they'll sink to the bottom, but
Oof, lost
uh,
a lot off
yeah,
that team.
they did. They did. I think Jed Fish is a nice coach. They
Yeah.
did pick up some guys, so I think they'll at least be competitive. I mean, they're still going to have a decent receiving core. This year. I
Yeah.
mean, you got Giles Jackson and a couple other guys. I have a buddy who's very close to that program and said that they had a couple receivers break out. They got the Enoch Vamahi kid from Ohio State, who I like as a player, to transfer in. They had the running back, Jordan Washington, transferred in from Arizona. They got Jaden Wayne. Remember him, the defensive end from Washington that went to Miami. Notre Dame recruited him. He transferred in.
Yep.
And so they got some pickups. They brought a lot of kids in from Arizona. Ephesians
Yep.
Price Sox, a kid that I like a lot that transferred in. So Will Rogers is your guy. I know how much you love Will Rogers. I'm
Yeah.
saying with full sarcasm in my voice.
I haven't seen him in a first round mock yet, so I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good as long as I don't have to
Here's my
go
thing,
there.
Ryan.
But,
I don't think
yep.
they're going to be anything close to what they were 2 years ago. I just don't see them dropping to the bottom. I think they'll be a 6 to 8 win team and be middle of the road, in my opinion, in the Big Ten.
I think they're gonna struggle, especially early. They might win 5 or 6 games in the end, but I think they're gonna be a team that like halfway through the season, they'll be like, all right, well, Rogers, we're good, man. We're gonna go with the Williams
Yeah.
kid and just kind of build for the future. That's kind of where I see that this team's gonna go. I don't know, man.
Here's
Whew.
let me ask you this, Ryan. Are you basing that off of
Yep.
just the roster, or are you also looking at their schedule,
Roster,
or a little bit of both?
the roster.
See,
I mean, it's a
kind of
combination to a degree, but
let
yeah.
me just say this: like I don't necessarily disagree with you. Like I said, I think they're a 6 to 8
Mhm.
win team, but here's what I think is going to help them. Their schedule starts off very well for them. They play Weber State in the opener at home. Then they play Eastern Michigan at home. Then they play Washington State on a neutral field. Then they play Northwestern at home.
Mhm.
They should be off to a 3-1, 4-0 start. That'll help them. Then they're at Rutgers. That's when their schedule gets a little bit tougher. Then they've got Michigan at home. Well, at Rutgers is not going to be easy, but Michigan at home, at Iowa, at Indiana, home against USC, at Penn State, home against UCLA, at Oregon. That's going to be tough. But my thing is, if they start off 4-0 like they should, they've only got to win 3 of their last 8 games to be a plus 500 team. That's all I'm saying.
It's going to be tough when Weber beats them in game 1. So I'm actually not fully joking on that one.
Yeah.
Weber's a pretty dang good FCS team. So
that would surprise me a little bit. That would surprise me a little bit. USC, I think, is going to actually be better than some people think. They're not going to drop to the bottom. They're not going to rise to the top. UCLA, I think, could have some issues. But to the bottom, I mean, are they going to be in the same level?
Their roster's in a tough spot too.
It is
tough spot roster-wise.
Oregon,
Chip Kelly didn't recruit for like 2 years.
No,
just threw him
no.
There you go.
I do think Oregon is going to battle with Ohio State for being the best team in the Big Ten. I do believe that.
Yeah.
And so Big 12, I think Utah is going to be in competition to be one of the best Big 12 teams. So I see them kind of quickly getting into that top group there. Arizona,
pretty good. I think Arizona,
pretty
good.
Even though I'm not sure about the coaching move, like how is that going to go?
I don't think he's going to be the guy long term, but I think he's got Fafita and McMillan, and he inherited a lot of good. He could be like Barry Switzer, man. He just catches gold there, Dallas, and then you're like, all right, that's enough of that. Like, let's move on here for a little bit.
Yep. Arizona State's gonna have a rough time in the Big 12.
They've already been having a rough time. So yeah.
And then who's the Colorado? Colorado is the one I'm not so sure of. They're not going to be top. They're not going to be the bottom.
Yeah, they're in mid-tier team, probably. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think anyone rises to the bottom, and I think Utah is going to be in competition. Look, there's going to be some really quality teams in the Big 12 this year, in my opinion. And Utah's going to be one of them. I think Oklahoma State's going to be a really good football team this year. I think Kansas State's going to have a chance to be a really good football team this year. I mean, look, I didn't think Notre Dame needed Dylan Edwards. I wouldn't have pushed for him, but that's a great pickup for K-State. Pickup for K-State.
I wonder where he's going to go after this year. Like when he leaves again.
When he does well at K-State, where's he going to go?
When he's like all conference, they're like, oh, let's enter the portal again. Let's do it. Sure.
I'll say this: Kansas State is going to have arguably the most dynamic running back quarterback duo in all of college football this next year.
Just pure speed,
just pure in athleticism.
Yeah.
How good of football players they be, who knows? West Virginia's coming off of a 9-win season. They have a lot coming back. They've had a good portal session. So I could see TCU bouncing back and being a quality team. So I actually think Kansas, forgot to mention Kansas, if Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, yes, losing the OC hurt, but Lance Leopold has won a lot of football games before, and he'll win a lot of football games after, with that one. So I think the Big 12 is going to be, I'll say this, Ryan, this isn't a comment on who the best conference is. That I think the Big 12 is going to be the most competitive conference within itself. There's a lot of teams that could make a run towards. There's going to be a lot of beating each other up, in my opinion, in the league this year. And look, we joked about Iowa State being ahead of Notre Dame, and they should not be. That's ridiculous. But exactly. There's a lot of quality football teams in that league.
They're solid. Yeah.
A lot of quality football teams in the Big 12. Really quality football teams.
And Oklahoma's not going to sink to the bottom of the SEC, but I will say this: I looked at their schedule the other day. Don't be surprised if Oklahoma goes 7-5 in their first year in the SEC. Man, it is a tough schedule, man. It's not easy.
So Ryan, I've been starting to do some of because I want to. Sometime May or June, I want to do our top 25, right? Because I'm like, you guys know my stance. If I'm going to bang on you for doing something, then if you're going to rip somebody for doing something, you should at least have the stones to kind of do your own thing. So I don't have a problem ripping on ranking services for bad evaluations because I put mine out there too, Ryan. We do that. So if you're going to rip someone for having a faulty top 25, then guess what? Come up with a top 25 of your own and let people take swings at it. So we will do that. And I can promise you Notre Dame will be in it. They will be in the top 25. But I've been starting to look at like schedules and just kind of doing some initial stuff on that. And here's Oklahoma's schedule: home against Temple, home against Houston, home against Tulane, home against Tennessee, at Auburn, Texas and Dallas, home against South Carolina, at Ole Miss, home against the mighty Black Bears of Maine, at Missouri, home against Bama, at LSU. That's not an easy schedule because there's a couple teams that are good enough to beat them at home.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I'm not saying I predict Tennessee to beat Oklahoma, but would it shock you if they went to Oklahoma and beat Oklahoma? Wouldn't shock me. If I were picking today and if I had to put my mortgage on the line today, I'd go with the home. I'd go with Oklahoma. I'd go with the home team. But I wouldn't feel very good about it. I'd tell my wife we need to be saving some money up between now and then because we may lose the mortgage payment that month because I was forced to bet on that game. Same thing with Alabama. Right now, I would bet on Alabama to beat them at Oklahoma, but and then they got Texas on the road. That alone, right there. Plus, they got to go to Ole Miss. I think that's going to be a loss. To Missouri, that I don't know about. I think Missouri is going to take a little bit of a step back this year. To be honest with you, Ryan, they lost a lot on defense, lost their D coordinator. I think they kind of had a bit of a everything went right season last year. I think they'll still be good, but I don't see like another 10-11 win season like last year. And then they play at LSU. If I was betting today, I'd take LSU in that game right now. I don't think LSU is going to be as good as they were on offense last year, but I think they're going to be better on defense than they were last year. Not great.
They can't be worse than they were last year on defense. So.
Very true. So
we don't talk enough about how awful LSU's defensive coordinator was when he had 3 defensive tackles that got drafted. A linebacker in Harold Perkins, who's one of the more dynamic defenders in college football. We don't talk enough about how awful he was as a defense coordinator. Awful. Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, but it's all his fault too. Brian Kelly deserves no blame for how bad things were. Even though he hired him and kept him, it's still not his fault. But to your point, Ryan, I mean, and they weren't like 3, 6, and 7th round draft picks. This is a 2, a 4, and a 6. Yeah. Like, those are top half of the draft guys, 2 of those 3 guys. So, and you got to replace that this year. But, and it's harder when you're just unwilling to pay people. So, Texas, I think, is going to be in competition. Will they win the big SEC? Don't know, but they're going to be in it, in my opinion. And then what else do we have? I'm pretty sure that I guarantee you Oregon State's going to finish in the top 2 of their new conference. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. I'll bet Ryan's salary on that one.
It's an easy bet. Free money, guys. Free money.
Yeah, so there we go. So any of those, Ryan, that you kind of want to take a swing at as being, hey, I definitely see this being different than you see it? Or we can't pretty much for the most part on the same page with those?
No, I added in. Yeah. I think Oklahoma's going to be a mid-tier team in the SEC first year, like 7-5, 8-4, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. I think Washington's going to have a struggle. Like I can see them going 5-7, 6-6, somewhere in that ballpark. Again, it's not bottoming out though. There's going to be a couple teams that are worse than them in the Big Ten in 2024. So yeah, Utah, I think, should be a good football team. Arizona, I think, is one of those teams that's going to catch fire in year 1 and then slowly decline because I just don't think that Brennan guy is the guy to be that dude. So, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right, we got another super chat from Tyler Evans. Still, we're going to stay with Tyler.
Tyler says, again, thank you, Tyler. Do you think as a college head coach it's harder to recruit your roster you have now or going out and recruiting high school kids?
Well, it depends on where you're at. Yeah. I mean, it's going to vary from school to school. For Notre Dame, it's going to be a lot easier to re-recruit their roster than it's going to be for, most schools for different reasons. It's going to be a whole lot harder for Notre Dame to keep their good players than it is going to be for Vanderbilt to keep their good players. That's a roster that's just their top 5 or 6 guys every year are going to get rated. It's just the reality of it.
Well, yeah, so it's always the lower tier schools. Yeah. I still feel bad for some of the lower tier schools, like even like the G5s, FCS schools, because they're going to develop these kids. They're going to be really good for a couple of years because they've been developed properly, and they're just going to get swooped on by. Literally, there's a kid that's out of Grand Valley State, a Division II team that has 40 plus offers in the portal and is decided between like LSU and Michigan and a couple other schools here soon, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, unfortunately, some lower tier schools, even inking down into like FCS and Division II, are just going to get rated every couple years because the players that they're developing are going to be off to bigger pastures, which I get, but then also it sucks as the coach though that developed them, man. You're
Yeah.
like, dang, brother, I took a shot on you and I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool.
That's why I respect that kid at that tight end that you were telling me about at South Dakota State.
Yeah,
It would have been
Tucker
super
Kraft.
easy for him to, take that pay raise and go play Power 5 football. But he said, no, I'm seeing this thing through. So
And he ended up
respect
being
that.
a third round draft pick by the Green Bay Packers, and he's
Yeah.
potential starter this year. So good for him.
Yep. I
Tucker
respect
Kraft,
that.
good kid, man. Good kid.
A couple other things too, Ryan, on the flip side of that, those teams that recruit in the top 5 to 10 every year also are going to have a lot harder time with keeping their roster intact because those teams that look, if you're paying to bring players in, then you're going to struggle to keep them on your team every year until the rules change. And this is the whole thing that Marcus Freeman's talked about. And this is where if Brian Kelly actually meant what he said and said it differently, I'd have said there's merit to what Brian Kelly is saying. And this is what I talked about the other day.
There's
Like,
so much merit about it.
right.
Yeah, there's so
But
much.
that's not really what he's doing because we've all seen this
No.
game played before. And
Yeah.
we don't buy players. Yes, you do. If you want to have an argument about how it's not worth it for me to spend $1 million on a kid from Grand Valley State or a kid from where was the kid that just picked Oklahoma? Where was he from? The D tackle that just committed Oklahoma.
The one that flipped from Oklahoma to Texas, or
no,
are you
the
talking
kid
about
that just the D tackle that was looking at LSU that just committed. Oh, give me a second. I'm going to look at this real quick. I forget. It's Williams. His last name is
kid.
Williams.
TCU kid. TCU,
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly, exactly.
Williams. Yeah.
Like, look, if I was Notre Dame, would I want to give that kid a big salary to come here? No, because it's not a good investment. So there could be an argument to make there. But here's the reality. And this is what the point Dabo is trying to make. This is the point Marcus Freeman is trying to make, and some other people are trying to make. It's the point Nick Saban tried to make. But when you have to buy your roster, it's going to be really hard to keep that together. Because what Ohio State has done to itself, Ryan, to a degree, is you've now put yourself in this black hole of you're going to now have to do this every year, just so you know. This is your world now. That if because you did this to get these kids, and next year when Junkins and Travion in the NFL, you're not going to be able to go to Dallas Hayden now as the next in line because you made that choice. So now what are you going to have to do at running back? You're going to have to go right back to the portal and do this all over again. And that's the danger and the decision you have to make when you're trying to build your premium players around portal guys. There's got to be some strategy to it. Those type of teams that are out there buying players, just so you know, you won the battle for signing day this year, but next year is going to be the same deal because it's you're screwed no matter what, Ryan. If the kid comes and doesn't play, he's going to be mad and he's going to go somewhere else and someone's going to pay him. If he does play, he's giving himself even more value and he's going to jump back in the portal and say, hey, now you got to pay me to keep me. That's the world you've now put yourself in. And that's why Marcus Freeman's like, look, we're not going to pay kids to come here. We're going to take care of the kids that are here. That's what Dabo's doing. Dabo, like, this is a dirty little secret. Like, Clemson kids are doing okay NIL wise.
Oh,
they are.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Dabo's thing is not, I don't believe in NIL. Dabo's like, I'm not giving it to some high school kid that's never done anything. I'm taking that money and I'm making sure that these guys are staying here and that we're happy here and that we're taking care of our guys.
The head coach from Boise State was kind of thrown under the bus a little bit for a comment that he made the other day. But basically what he was saying was, we're Boise State. We don't have a big payroll of money just to help with kids, but we're going to. So basically the money that they have is going to be allocated to the veterans and the players that are already on the roster. And then the incoming freshmen will kind of get what's ever left over. You know what I mean? It's just, It's prioritization is kind of the best way to put it, right? Like they're prioritizing the veterans and the guys that have been a part of the program and have had mainstay. They're basically rewarding them for being loyal to them is kind of the.
And people act, Ryan, like Boise's Alabama or Georgia, and they're paying thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, for some D tackle freshman. They're not doing that anyway. right?
Right.
Like, so for him, you took it the right way. Look, this is what
Mhm.
we're going to do. Because if you're going to come here only because we're going to pay you, then you're not
Yep.
bought into what we're trying to do here. We're not Bama. We're not Texas. We can't afford to do that. We need guys who are going to be bought in for being here. There's plenty of
Right.
kids out there that are going to be fine with that
Yep.
because no kids turning down 250,000 to go to Missouri because Boise outbid them. It's a false narrative. It's, the schools they're recruiting against aren't paying
Right.
those kids either.
Well,
This is what we're going to do.
Boise State had their running back that was people were trying to get to leave this year, the Ashton Gianti kid, who's probably one of the better running backs in college football. The kid's excellent, right? But I think how they're building that and how they're building a stable culture of like, hey, if you're here and you are good to us, we'll be good to you. I think that has a lot of merits of why kids would want to even stay around. You know what I mean? So because that's the same thing we talked about with Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State. Obviously, if he went to Bama for that 1 year, he would have made a whole lot more money than what he made at South Dakota State. But he was honoring guys honoring him. You know what I mean? And I think that has a lot of merit to it overall. But it's a mess right now, man. I was actually talking to my buddy Joe about this before, and obviously Joe, but we were just talking about how the market's getting reset and how we're overpaying for some very basic defensive tackles right now in the spring, and the supply is not as high as the demand, and it's
Which means you're overpaying for players that aren't going to give you the bang for your buck. And that's the whole thing
right.
with Kelly, Ryan.
Yeah.
There's a very good answer he could have given
Oh,
that
yeah.
we'd all been like, yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes guys.
Well,
I'm not going to go pay $1.5 million for a rotation defensive tackle who's only
right.
coming here to get paid. You've
Right.
got to be bought into what we're trying to do. You have to
Yeah.
be. You could come here. We'll take care of you.
There's
And
everything has a market. Everything has a market. Anybody's ever
right,
gone for a job, right? And there's a negotiation process to that job. There's a market for you, right? And I don't blame Brian Kelly for that part at all. Like that kid wants
right,
the X amount. We don't think you're worth X amount, so we're not going to pay
right.
you X amount. Cool,
Exactly.
great, that's fine.
Exactly.
I hated LSU fans on Twitter though because they're all like, "Oh man, you guys are creating a false narrative." I'm like, no, bro, your coach made the false narrative.
Right.
Nobody made the false
Right.
narrative but your coach. We didn't make it. I never once said
Right.
LSU doesn't play players. We know that LSU pay players. Your coach tried to say that they
Right.
don't pay players. It was his
Right.
fault.
And it's just it's the latest in the line of this is who Brian Kelly is. There's always just going to be creating an excuse and a false narrative to have a justification for why things don't work out or so you can pat yourself on the back when they do. Look how
Yep.
great I did in spite of these terrible circumstances that we've put ourselves in. We
Only
don't buy players.
36
Yes, you do.
scholarship players. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, no, it happens, and it was so funny. I saw the CJ West kid, who's a good player. He actually went to what was the high school that JJ McCarthy was at before he went to IMG in
Nazareth
Illinois?
Academy.
Nazareth, yeah. So he
Nazareth
was at
Academy.
CJ West, defensive tackle, was at Nazareth. He was actually a really good player at Kent State. He ended up picking Indiana over LSU and some other big offers he had. And so people are so funny. I'm like, guys, literally a defensive tackle just picked Indiana over going down to LSU, a
Right.
team that a player that you guys
You
need
can't
pretty
outbid
desperately.
Indiana. You're telling me that's
Well,
going to cost you
that's
millions
what they
of
turned
dollars?
off. Like, we're not going to pay a player that blah blah blah. And I'm like, you think Indiana's paying that player big money? Like, is that what you're
Yes, you
trying
think they're
to
giving
make
him
for
$1
them?
million to come on, bro. Come on, man.
So
Yeah,
bad, so bad.
but this is what fan bases do with him. They will sell their souls to defend him. There was a big chunk of the Notre Dame fan base that Ryan did that for years. Years. There's still silly people. I was going to pull this up earlier. There's still people that believe this. Some guy responded on our YouTube chat. He goes, Freeman can't coach and is learning on the job. Kelly is superior to Freeman in every way. Like
Every way.
every fan base has those kind of people. Every fan base
Yeah.
has those kind of people, right?
He's not
But
superior
the
in looks.
there's
Not superior
too
in
many
looks.
of those people, right?
Right.
It's not superior a lot of things, y'all.
I'm just
mean,
joking. Just joking.
no, I know you are. It's just like Brian Kelly won 5 games against teams that were ranked in the top 25 the 3 years before he arrived. Marcus Freeman's won 7. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
This is great from my guy Matt 11 to 2011 GT. Do you think Brian Kelly's new chef cooks burnt ends? Not unless he hired Tobias Merriweather's dad to come do their meals. But that's
I love burn ends.
a
Burn ends
great
really
response. Such a great response. There was another one up here that I saw that I just thought was absolutely hilarious about him. But yeah, I can't find that here. Oh, here we go. This also from Matt. He goes, LSU's academic requirements are really hurting Brian Kelly. His chef is trying his best. This is just so great.
I thought I heard that recruiting at LSU was so much easier than
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it is in theory, but
oh my goodness.
Yeah. We have Mark 1 with a super chat. Thank you, Mark. Have you guys had a chance to interview the new AD? Have you seen what upgrades they're looking to achieve with the new football complex?
I have reached out multiple times, and apparently I'm not even important enough to get a response email from. So, no, we have not interviewed the new AD. And
someone send this to Pete Bavacqua.
Yes.
Bavacqua,
I would
if I could
love
ever say that name. Yeah.
I would love to interview the new AD, but apparently we're not important enough to get a response email from. So I'll keep efforting. They could at least tell us like what the football team has told us. Now Marcus Freeman's never going to come on your show. So okay, all right. I don't need to keep asking then. So
right.
Whatevs.
But we're sponsored by Celsius. He needs to come on. Come
on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, let's see here. This is a good comment here from Coach Bet574. He says, as someone who has coached against the kids of both Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly, you never would have known Marcus Freeman is there if you didn't see him. Brian Kelly stood behind the end zone to let you know that he was there every time.
Yep.
That's just, yeah.
Did you see my post? I know you've been doing a lot, Brian, but I actually put a little bit of an update on the board, a little intel from my conversation with Brock Harris, the 2026 tight end. And he had a very
Ryan, I always make time for your intel, buddy.
Did you see it?
I did.
Did you see it then or no? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, did you see the part though where he was talking about Marcus Freeman, or Marty Biaggi was talking to him about Marcus Freeman and gave the story about how the cleaning crew didn't come in one day, so instead of him calling someone or something, he just did it himself, like a very surveillant type of leader, which I just thought, again, look, I still am not sure what's going to happen in the Marcus Freeman era as a win-loss perspective, but I will know that if it turns out really good, I am going to be very proud of that he is my head coach. And if it doesn't turn out really well, I'm still going to be proud that he's the head coach at University of Notre Dame, because he's a good person.
Yes.
Good person.
Yes.
And a very likable person.
And win or lose, you're going to get his best shot.
Yes.
And he's not going to make excuses. Like Marcus Freeman and Charlie Weiss are two very different people in a lot of ways. But the one thing they have in common is neither of them are excuse makers. They both embrace what makes Notre Dame unique. And I had someone who listens to the show emailed me this the other day. They had read the article I wrote about Brian Kelly, and he says, Lou Holtz always said to really succeed at Notre Dame, you have to embrace what makes Notre Dame unique. Brian Kelly always viewed Notre Dame owed him something. Right. Marcus Freeman looks at it the other way around. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't make demands. He doesn't let the leadership of Notre Dame walk all over him, but he respects what makes Notre Dame unique, and he turns into it. And that's the difference. Is he perfect? No, nobody is, right? No, but you feel like you're getting some level of genuineness, in my opinion, from him. And again, if he doesn't succeed, it won't be because of lack of effort. It'll just be because, hey, maybe he just wasn't quite good enough. We'll find that out. I don't know if he is or isn't. Right. No one can tell me they know for sure he is or is not that guy. No one can tell me that, because we don't know, because he hasn't done it. But you also can't tell me that you don't see certain things that you're like, they're better off now as a program. Like there's no
just from a other than perspective and everything. Yeah.
Right. There's the only way you could convince me, like that one person I have to question what your motivations are for your criticism of Marcus Freeman, and I'll just leave it at that. To make a comment that ridiculous, you're either A, a troll, or B, you have some criteria with which you evaluate coaches that we don't have and have nothing to do with football. And I'll just leave it at that. Right? I think everybody's catching my drift on that particular one. There's always going to be people like that. But what we can all guarantee is, at the end of the day, you're going to get his best.
Yes.
You're going to get his best effort. He may not always – he should have focused more here. He should have done this. He should have made this decision. That's all fine. But he's going to give you whatever he does. He thinks this is the best thing for us, and he's not going to get outworked. He's not going to get outfought. He's not going to get – it's not going to be for lack of vision. Some guys just don't have the chops to be champions, Ryan. That may be true of Marcus Freeman. We don't know that. He may very well have the chops. You go look at his first 2 years as head coach and compare him to the first 2 years of the Dabo Swinney era, and you're going to be like, they're way ahead of the 8 ball. You look at what was Brian Kelly's record his first 2 years, 16-10. Oh, Marcus Freeman inherited a better team. No, he didn't. He inherited a better program. But you can't convince me the roster that Brian Kelly inherited was better than the roster that Marcus Freeman inherited. Do you need me to start listing off all the first and second round draft picks that roster had that he inherited?
I think some of us forget because of the record how pretty poor the 2021 team was. Like, it was not a good football team, man.
No,
but we just keep pretending like it was.
You had to go get Kane Madden to start on the offensive line, bro. Come on now.
Yeah.
I mean,
we saw him almost lose to Toledo, right? We saw him need like a heroic effort at the end to beat Toledo that year. And, that was
almost needed overtime to beat a 5-7 Florida State team. Yeah, I mean, were there good players in here? Yes, but I mean, right, guys. Sure. Brian Kelly inherited Michael Floyd, Theo Riddick, Jonas Gray, Sear Woods, Zach Martin, Chris Watt, Braxton Cave, Tyler Eifert, Kyle Rudolph, Harrison Smith, Manti Te'o, Capron Lewis Moore. Prince Shumbo was already committed to Notre Dame. Bennett Jackson was already committed to Notre Dame. Lewis Nixon was already committed to Notre Dame. I mean, the team that Zeke Mata, the team he inherited, don't tell me that the team he inherited, that Marcus Freeman inherited, had more talent than the team. Did they have better depth in some areas? Sure, they did. But don't tell me the roster was better. The program was better. The program was better. And somebody just said Freeman lost to Marshall and Stanford. You can't make excuses for that. Andrew, this is where you kill me. When have we ever made an excuse for that? Ever. Yeah. Please tell me the time that I made an excuse for that. Just like, you know what else I didn't do? I didn't make an excuse that Notre Dame got beat by almost 3 touchdowns by Navy in Brian Kelly's first year, or that they lost at home to Tulsa in Brian Kelly's first year, or that they lost to 3-9 South Florida in Brian Kelly's second year with 6 first-round draft picks on that team, Ryan? Am I correct on that? Yep. 6 first-round draft picks in 2011. You had Zach Martin. You had Tyler Eifert. You had Michael Floyd. You had Harrison Smith. Maybe it was only 4 on that 2011 team. And then you had a bunch of second-round picks on that team as well. They lost to 3-9 South Florida that year, lost to Pitt that year. We didn't make excuses for Brian Kelly then, not make excuses for him now. If you want to be critical of the things that we say, cool. But don't say you can't make excuses for that, because we never have. Never have. So I want you to point out the time that I've ever made an excuse for Notre Dame losing to Marshall or Stanford. Please do that for me.
You know who else didn't make an excuse for it? Marcus Freeman, which is
bingo. Exactly that's the difference. You know who did make excuses for losing to Navy? We weren't prepared for the veer. They're a triple option team. How are you not prepared for the veer? Did you not watch film of this team?
It's all a built-in excuse, man. Even the stuff that actually is a legitimate excuse, like the Georgia game when they only had one healthy running back or whatever, right, with Tony Jones. But after the game, he comes out and says, like, well, we knew we were going to be able to run the ball. You don't say that. You just don't say it. Right. You just don't say it. Just like you don't say that we're not going to pay football players.
Right. Ugh. Navy was doing things we weren't prepared for. So you're telling me you just got out-coached by Navy, right? You got out-coached. I mean, let's be honest. Todd Graham dominated Brian Kelly. Beat him in Arizona State, beat him at Tulsa, right? I mean, so again, but I love your response. Well, you know who else didn't make excuses? Marcus Freeman. Sure. You know who did make excuses for losing to Tulsa, losing to Northwestern, losing to Navy, losing to South Florida? Brian Kelly. That's the difference.
And that was the point, right? I mean, literally, we said we still need to figure out what Marcus Freeman is as a coach, but literally that was led off with, but I'm proud that he's a part of it, right? I'm proud of the person that he is, the character he holds. He's a good symbol of Notre Dame football. And if he can coach, then he's going to, he's got you want to win.
Yes. Yeah. It felt dirty sometimes, like wanting Notre Dame to win a championship under Brian Kelly. Because you're like, I just don't want that guy to be rewarded for who he is, you know? And, trying to get me fired up today is what he's trying to do.
We have AST12321 with a super chat. Thank you so much. Says, do you think there will be any non-injury related changes to the quarterback depth chart between now and the end of fall camp?
You know what? I'm fired up today, AST, and I'm not going to give you the well, there could be, I'm just going to flat out make a prediction. Yes, there will be a change. The depth chart by the end of fall camp will not look like what it is. So let's agree on this premise. The depth chart as of right now is Riley Leonard 1, Steve Angeli 2, Kenny Minchie 3, CJ Carr 4.
Yep.
Is that fair? That will not be the depth chart by the end of fall camp. I'm not going to say who it is, but I promise you somebody's going to move ahead of somebody. But non-injury related. Now, one thing that won't change is number 1. That's going to stay the same. That's Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
I mean,
you
I think
should have led with
star,
that,
Ryan.
You should have
right?
led with that, because I think someone's going to come to Twitter now and be like, Brian
course.
said the quarterback 1 conversation is up for debate.
Of course, they will. But
they will.
But if we're not talking injury, Riley Leonard's number 1. I love CJ Carr. I think he can be a star. I love Kenny Minchie. I think he can be a star. They're not going to be better than – they may be better than Riley Leonard by the time they're juniors and seniors of where Riley Leonard was as a junior and a senior. They're not better than him as a senior when they're freshmen and the redshirt freshmen.
Right.
That's the reality of it, right? So non-injury related, no change 1. But 2, 3, and 4, man, could be a lot of changes. And I do think there will be some – I just don't think it's going to be status – and I don't know who it's going to be, Ryan, but it could be something as simple as CJ leaping Kenny. It could be something as simple as Kenny leaping Steve. Someone's going to have a fall where they just really take off and separate themselves. Who's that going to be? I don't know. And the reason I say that, I'm not trying to cop out, but it's just that's the talent level that I think exists in that room. I could see Kenny being that guy. CJ's the flavor of the month now, and it's earned, and we both love him. I believe you also gave him a 5-star ranking as well, Ryan. I know.
No,
or were you just more top 50? More top 50?
5-4 on them. Yeah, top 50 good. Yep.
So not a huge difference. I think he's top 20. You think he's top 35. We both think he's excellent, right? But that's deserved. But it's not a knock on CJ, but it's more about let's not write off Kenny either, because they're both ultra talented. One of them is going to go this spring or go into fall camp, Ryan, and just separate. That's what I think, and I don't know which one it'll be, but it's going to be fun to watch because I just love the talent in that room. That's at the end of the day, love the talent in that room. I do. Yep, and it's going to make the room better to have that battle.
And you're getting a preferred walk-on like Anthony Rizak coming in too, where it's like, when's the last time you got a preferred walk-on that runs like 4.48, whatever the heck he runs? Like, yeah,
I know.
Very talented room. I feel bad for the dudes playing against the scout team offense next year, man.
I know, right?
Who the heck's that kid running at quarterback?
Seriously. They're going to have one of the throwers from the top 4 now, and then Anthony Rizak.
When's the last time the Navy quarterback in scout team is actually maybe a quarterback? That doesn't happen too often. Usually it's a kid that played option quarterback in high school that's playing a different position.
Chase
now.
Ketter.
Literally, you just literally now you can just be like, Anthony, you're running Navy triple option this week, bro. Go ahead, do it. Like, all right.
Well, cool. Especially now that Navy's kind of transitioning into a little bit more of a hybrid option offense, Ryan, where they do want to have a more, like the guy that I expect to be their starting quarterback this year is going to look more like a quarterback than what Navy's had in recent years. Where he's going to look more like I think that guy could maybe drop back and throw it a few times.
If Navy had Anthony Rizak, I'd be like, oh dang, that's a tough dude to stop, man.
Well, they recruited him. I mean, Navy and Air Force both recruited Anthony. Did Army as well? I know Navy and Air Force did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for good reason. And it's not just that he's high character and a good student. It's also because he has that kind of dynamic athletic ability for their level that they look for. So, yeah.
Oh, man, he would have been money with Troy Calhoun as like an option quarterback at Air Force. He would have been sick. Yeah. Would have been real sick. But glad he's here, obviously. Tommy Guns. Is Notre Dame and Rider Lions sort of incompatible with each other based on all 3 quarterbacks' timelines to pick their choice? We talked about this. Tommy, I would put it like this, right? You're in a very good position with Noah Grubbs. You're also in a pretty dang good position with Brady Hart. I think Rider Lions likes Notre Dame a lot too. I just think the point that you're getting at this point in the recruitment timelines is both. Well, at least Noah Grubbs wants to make it. If you haven't seen my article that's out there or the intel piece I put up last night, he wants to make an end of July decision. So that's his timeline. He is going to be committed somewhere, Noah Grubbs, before the season kicks off. So he is a summer decision as a 2026 quarterback. Brady Hart, still a possibility that he commits before the start of his junior year, but that is a little bit more up in the air than it once was, but it's still a possibility that is potentially out there. Ryder Lyons is in no rush, like just not in a rush. I could see him being a guy that doesn't commit until next offseason. Like I just don't think that he's in any sort of rush. So the timeline thing is important.
Add some
right?
context
Because,
to why that may be also, Ryan, because there's a
Yeah.
specific reason. Because like some people
Yeah.
think a quarterback that's going to wait that long, it's because he wants to do the
Right.
play the game and get the NIL offers. His situation is
No.
completely different.
Yeah.
And then because it also ties into Tommy's other question, he says, could and would they take Lyons even if one of the other QBs committed, since he apparently will do a mission? Because that ties into the explanation
Right.
Ryan's about to give about why Ryder needs to, not only wants to be, but needs to be patient with this decision, because it's more than just where I'm going to go to school and play football.
Well, if you know anything about his brother, who was a 2023 tight end, 2024, what was Walker? Was he
He
2023?
would have been
I
a
think,
freshman this past year, 23. He
Right?
was in the 23 class.
23 kid, yeah. So Walker Lyons, who was a 2023 tight end, also out of Folsom High School, who actually got hurt his senior year of high school, was a really good tight end, though. So he's actually on a mission right now. He ended up flipping his commitment. He was originally committed to Stanford. I believe he's going to USC now, is kind of where he is at the moment. So he is going on a mission, and Ryder is likely to kind of do a similar trajectory there, right? So with the mission part in effect, I mean, obviously he's going to be a kid that's not going to be able to help your team in 2026 when you first get there, like a Brady Hart and a Noah Grubbs will. So he is a player that's going to take his time. He's not in any rush. He's going to let the process play out, which, again, to your original question, Tommy, that's why it's important, because I like Ryder Lyons a lot. I think he's a tremendous football player. But Brady Hart and Noah Grubbs are both very good players as well, right? So you're not going to say no to those guys and wait a full calendar year for a guy that's probably not even going to help you in the year 2026 if you need him to play, if you need a guy to come in and play in some capacity, right? So Brady Hart's potential this summer, Noah Grubbs absolutely going to commit somewhere this summer. So those timelines are obviously fighting against being patient with Ryder Lyons. Right. Ida Benami, we all need that rants from Wednesday. Wouldn't have
Brian.
Oh,
we
okay,
all
gotcha.
needed
Brian.
that rant Wednesday, Brian.
Gotcha. We all need that rant Wednesday, Brian. Wouldn't have minded 5 more minutes even. LOL, said it all perfectly.
Well, I started the show off saying I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. And then like 37 minutes of throwing grenades. It went a little longer than I thought, but it was good, Ryan, because I felt like I got it off my chest, because it would just, and people saying, why should we care? Well, here's why you should care, because you should understand, if you're someone that still doesn't think Notre Dame can recruit at a high level, that's why you should care about what Brian Kelly said. If you're someone that thinks that this is standing in their way and this excuse is standing in their way, that's why you should care. Because now he's at LSU doing the same exact thing. Well, we only had 36 scholarship players when we first got here. It was a miracle that we only lost 4 games in our first year. Typical Brian Kelly, lowering the standard so he can pat himself on the back when things go well. What was the excuse this year? You had the best offense in college football, still lost 3 games and almost lost a couple more live.
Heisman Trophy winner, too,
right?
And lost 3
what
games.
Were the excuses? Well, and this and that and the other thing, and there's always excuses for what he does. And It should matter, because you have a coach now, and we don't know to the level to where he's going to grow this program. But what we do know is you're not getting any of that from Marcus Freeman. You're not getting any of that stuff, Ryan. And I talked in the show the other day about, just watching him against Wake Forest and Stanford, not at all enjoy the fact that they outscored those 2 teams 102-30. Because he's like, doesn't matter. I didn't come here to beat these teams by 30-something. I came here to beat Ohio State. I came here to beat Clemson. And we didn't get that done. And that's the thing I respect about it.
Guys, it's almost unbelievable what LSU did last season. It's almost unbelievable. They had an offense that averaged 46 points a game. They had a quarterback that won the Heisman and went number 2 overall in the draft. They had a wide receiver that went top 10 in the draft, was number 2 wide receiver off the board of Malik Neighbors. They had another young man in Brian Thomas Jr., who was a first-round draft pick, number 24 overall, I think is what he ended up being, or 23 overall. He's got 2 offensive tackles who could be high draft picks in the 2025 NFL draft. He had 3 defensive tackles drafted in the top 6 rounds this past draft. He's got a defensive player in Harold Perkins, who a lot of people would have argued is maybe the best defensive player in college football before last season, coming off of a freshman All-American season. And he lost 3 games. With what I just said, think about that for a second, please. That is almost
and Ryan, let's be honest about something else too, man. If it wasn't for Jaden Daniels playing Hercules or Superman or however else you want to explain it, they got a couple more losses under their belts as well. They should have lost to Arkansas last year. I talked about this on the show when I was going through LSU's schedule. I mean,
Arkansas.
If
KJ Jefferson plays, they probably win that game.
Both years. Well, KJ played against them this year.
Yeah, the year before I'm talking about. With
the year before. But this year, Ryan, I mean, if you look at how this year's game played out, Arkansas had a 13-3 lead. They scored. KJ threw a touchdown pass with 48 seconds left to go down to go up 13-3. Well, their offense goes 75 yards in 18 seconds and scores a touchdown, right? And then LSU takes a lead. Arkansas ties it up. LSU takes a lead. Arkansas ties it up. The offense leads them down, and they kick a game-winning field goal with 5 seconds left to beat Arkansas at home. Right? Like that they were a lot closer to losing that game. If Jaden Daniels, while banged up, doesn't look like Superman in the second half of the Missouri game, they lose that game. I mean, some of the plays he made in that game were just ridiculous. And it's another example of you were not a very good football team. You had Superman playing quarterback for you last year. And that's the base. I mean, Florida outplayed them for a chunk of that game. Same thing. Texas A&M outplayed them for a chunk of that game. If it wasn't for the fact that they had Jaden Daniels, I mean, they beat Missouri by 10. They outscored them 22-7 in the fourth quarter. I mean, so yeah, you're absolutely correct. They were losing to Texas A&M at halftime. I mean,
it's almost unbelievable. I mean, again, think about that. A team lost 3 football games that had the number 2 overall pick and a Heisman Trophy winner quarterback, 2 first-round wide receivers, 2 offensive tackles that could be top 64 picks in the 2025 class, a potential first-rounder on defense in Harold Perkins, and 3 defensive tackles who are all very talented got drafted, and you lost 3 games.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable. 46 points per game, and you lost 3 games. That's almost unbelievable. Almost unbelievable.
I don't think they're going to be as bad this year, Ryan, because I do like the defensive hires they've made. I like the D coordinator they hired. I liked hiring Bo Davis. Now, does that mean that they're going to go out and have a top 10 defense next year? No, they're not. But I do think it's going to be better. I think their defense is going to be better than what their offense is going to fall off with the talent that they have coming back, in my opinion. But they're not going to be they're not going to be a great team. One of the questions I had in the buy, sell, or hold was that LSU is not going to be a playoff team. Their defense, and I think their defense is going to be better, but I'm talking about better from being terrible. I mean, they're not going to be as terrible. They still have talent problems in the secondary. They still have talent problems on the D line. They still have talent problems on defense.
Yeah.
Yes, but they're just not going to be, because like last year they had bad talent and ridiculous scheme and a failure to execute. This year, I think they'll at least be a little better there. But that's why I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. But Brian Kelly's going to make a bunch of comments between now and then that are going to get everybody in LSU country happy with 9-3, 8-4, because there's going to have a million excuses why. But we had this recruiting class. It's the wait till next year, Ryan. And how many times were we always having those conversations? Wait till next year. And then next year would come, and then behind the scenes, we're getting the same excuses for why, it's not actually this year. It's now going to be next year again. And that's basically where it is. That's basically where it is.
I mean, yeah. Because I think of it this way. And LSU beat Alabama in 2022 off of a walk-off to Mason Taylor. If they didn't beat Alabama, I would love to see what the reception would be for Ryan, or perception would be from Brian Kelly from LSU fans, because otherwise, guys, like, what exactly is he hanging his hat on the first 2 years? Like, what is he hanging hat on as far as wins? Everyone's, they beat Alabama. They're great. It's like, guys, no, they're still not great. It was a farce. It was a farce. I don't know. I looked at that roster the other day too. They have good wide receiver talent. LSU always has good wide receiver talent, right? They should have a pretty good offensive line. I need to see it with Garrett Nussmeier. We'll see about that one. And then the defense, I mean,
you know what I like about their offense, Ryan? I think they're going to be a lot better running the football this year. They're going to have a big old line coming back. And I do like. I think that freshman, the rising sophomore now. I think it's not
Jackson?
Williams, the other
Cameron Jackson?
Jackson. I like that kid
Cameron
coming
Jackson.
out. He's a good football player, and he played a decent amount for them in the rotation last year. So, yeah, that'll make them better. They were not going to need Nussmeier to carry them as much as the others. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be games next year where they're going to need the offense to go score. And I don't know that they're going to be as able to do that. That's the reality of it. And I think that's the reason I don't have them as a team that is in contention for the winning the SEC.
Yeah,
That's
I think
where
they'll go
we're at.
8-4 this year.
This is a great
8-4
comment
is
from
the
Anthony. He says, "Can anyone imagine LSU's Iowa's 2023 offense paired with LSU's 2023 defense? That would be so awful, so
Yes.
awful."
Yep.
But you know what else? Could you imagine LSU's 23 offense with Iowa's 23 defense? Which I think somebody else in the chat, I believe I saw somebody bring up at one point in time. That would be ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yep.
So here we go.
Ida Benani, Sean Terry's route running is pretty good. He runs with purpose, intention, and looks very quick out of his breaks. Loved the recent clips I saw. Yeah, I think Sean Terry's explosive mover. I don't think that he has very good long speed, but I think the short area stuff is very impressive. I think that he can change direction well. So yeah, I think he brings upside as a route runner for sure. I would agree with that.
He's a niche guy, and he's good at that niche. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm happy they have him, and if they would have waited on him, I'd have been perfectly fine with that too. You know, just a nice player. And sometimes, but this is what I'm talking about, Ryan. Like, does landing Sean Terry have me feeling all warm and fuzzy that they're going to go out and win a national title now? Because no, they don't. But this is part of building a roster. Not every receiver needs to be the next Michael Floyd or Golden Tate or Will Fuller. Some guys need to be Chris Fink. Some guys need to be Matt Shelton. Some guys need to be Theo Riddick in 2010. Can Sean Terry do for this offense what Theo Riddick did in 2010? Yeah, I think so. 40 catches and, good after the catch and not a burner. 4.6 something guy. Didn't Theo run like a 4.68 at the pro day? Pretty quick though. Like that, yeah. Pretty shifty. Yep. So that's the whole thing is you've got to build a roster. And sometimes it means taking a niche player. Hey, this guy's not an every down defensive end, but we can put him in our nickel packages and he can flip and get after the quarterback. Okay, cool. That's fine.
Yep.
This guy's a really good down 1 and 2 linebacker, but you've got to take him out on a nickel pack. Okay, fine.
And Terry can return punts too, so it has value in all spots. Yep.
So that's part of building a roster. It doesn't get me all warm and fuzzy, but it's a nice pickup. I personally would have waited a little bit, to be honest with you. So that's kind of how I feel about that one with Sean Terry. But the route running, you are correct. He understands attacking leverage. He's so quick out of his breaks. I mean, he can get separation beyond what a guy that's a mid 4.5 would normally get because of that quickness and understanding how to get open. There's no doubt.
Yep.
There's no doubt. All right, I'm going to try to find someone we have not brought up yet. Here we go. Let's go to Wyatt Kerwin.
Wyatt, what's up, man? Thank you for the question. If you had to construct a championship roster of Notre Dame players from 1997 till now, wow, we're going back way far here. Post Lou Holtz era, who would be your starters on offense and defense at each position since 97?
Goodness gracious. So that's basically post Lou Holtz.
Yep.
Who would my quarterback be? I mean, I'm back and forth every time we have this conversation between Brady and Jimmy. Jimmy's the more natural passer. Brady's the winner. So we'll go. I'm cool with that. We'll go Brady. Yep. Running back, it's going to be.
I'll take Audric, man. I'll take what we just had. I'll take Audric.
They've had Josh Adams. They've had Dexter. They had Julius Jones. Yep. I'd probably go Julius, but I'm okay with Audric. I wouldn't have a problem with Audric. I like Julius a little bit more. Wide receiver, that's a little bit easier for me. That's going to be Michael Floyd, Golden Tate. Yeah, I'm going to go Michael Floyd, Golden Tate, and Will Fuller. With all due respect to Samardzija and Stovall, they're in my rotation, but I'm going to go Floyd, Fuller, and Golden Tate. Golden would be my slot. Will be my Z. Michael Floyd's my boundary guy. That's what I would do.
Samardzija, Floyd, and Golden Tate for me. Samardzija. It hurts keeping Will off, but yeah, we'll keep Will off for now.
Whew, and we're also keeping Mo Stovall off, which is not an easy one either. You know what I mean? Like,
he
so
can
like
be, he
they've
can,
had some stretches of having good receivers, Ryan. It just hasn't been consistent, you know?
he can be a back. He can be a backup special teamer if he
Yeah,
wants. He can come play. He can come
he
play.
could be my rotation guy. Uh, I,
Yep.
I guess you could I thought Derek Mays was done in 96. Am I wrong?
Not
Am I
sure.
wrong on that one? Let me look at Derek Mays' stat. I honestly, as much as I love Derek Mays, he's still not on my top 3 of those guys. I love Derek
Right.
Mays. Um, yeah, Derek Mays last year was 95. He was drafted in 96, so Derek Mays isn't eligible for this conversation.
Mhm.
Tight end, I'd go Eifert. That's still my guy, Tyler
Two tight
Eifert.
end sets. Tyler Eifert and give him Michael Mayer. 2 tight end sets.
So
Let's do it.
which receiver of the 3 we discussed are you taking off the field when you do that? When you go 12 personnel, Ryan, where are you going?
Or I can just go empty and get them all on the field. We can make that happen.
Okay, so you're taking Audric off the field? Okay.
Yeah, I'll take
Okay.
Aldrich off for now.
Gotcha.
It's all right.
Gotcha. All good. Offensive line. This one's a little bit easier for me, Ryan, and this is with all due respect to my dude Ryan Harris, but I'm going Joe Walt and Ronnie Stanley at tackle. I'm going Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson at guard. And center, I'm going Jeff Fain.
I guess the question would be is can you put Zach Martin at guard since he played tackle at Notre Dame? I guess would be the question. Oh, we can do that?
You could.
Okay.
You could, yeah. Because
All right.
if he was on the same team as those guys, that's what they would have done with him.
Sure. Yep. Jeff Fain is the best center I've seen at Notre Dame. I would go Jeff Fain. Yes. Jeff Fain, Quentin Nelson. If I'm allowed to put Zach Martin at guard, I will put Zach Martin at guard for sure. Joe Alt, yes. And yeah, Ronnie Stanley. Yeah. Because Ronnie Stanley also
If
played right
you
tackle at Notre Dame. So, yeah.
Yep. If you could not move them to the position they didn't play,
Yep.
but you can put them right or left, but they have to stay at tackle or guard. I personally would have Zach Martin over Ronnie Stanley in college for what they were in college. Absolutely. In college. Zach was a phenomenal offensive tackle his last 2 years at Notre Dame. Ronnie was really talented, but even in his last year was a little inconsistent. He would just have some of those moments. But you're in a win-win. Who would my other guard be in that situation, Ryan? That's a little bit of a different question. I have to really think about. Because, like, what's that? If you could, if you could move Zach inside, right? Like, so because you had mentioned, like, so just kind of for fun, what would it be? Because there was a couple guys that played guard back.
I think the
Davey era that I think would be good players.
Well, I was thinking of the highest highs that I've seen at guard, other than Quentin Nelson, probably was Aaron Banks. Now, Aaron Banks was very inconsistent, but the best of Aaron Banks was pretty dang good, man. It was really, really good.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how much you remember, Mike Gandy, who was a third-round pick, and
I remember Gandy in the NFL. I don't remember
player. Yeah, so they had some guys at guard early in his tenure that were earlier when you were younger that had some pretty good players. So but Aaron Banks, when he's at his best, was pretty good. Chris Watt, you know what? I'd probably go with Chris Watt, to be honest with you, because Aaron was flashed, but Chris was a really steady player. Really steady player.
Chris was real good. He played in the NFL for a couple years too. Chris Watt.
Yeah,
played well.
I am definitely not taking John Sullivan over Jeff Fain. Not even thinking for a second about that.
John Sullivan was good though. John Sullivan was good. Yeah,
he was all right. I had some issues with his
too.
He's a long-time NFL player. He's not in the same league as Jeff Fain, in my personal opinion.
Apparently, he does combine prep now for some offensive linemen. Yeah,
that's awesome.
John Sullivan. Yes, he does.
I love hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
I was actually texting with him about an offensive lineman a couple months ago. Yeah,
nice. Yeah. Very nice.
We got Lucky Ducks 512. If Will Griffin commits to Florida, do you think that'll move up Brady Hart's timeline? I mean, look, any of those types of moves can always retroactively create that movement, right? But I don't if you ask me today who's Brady Hart's number 2, I don't know if I'd say Florida. I'm not sure.
Agreed.
That takes one off the table, but I don't because he still has Miami, which is a team that
I don't think they've recruited him very well, to be honest with you, Ryan.
Yeah. I think they just offered him pretty recently-ish Florida, a few weeks ago, right? It wasn't even that long ago. So
they're not recruiting him with the same vigor of some other programs, which is another reason why Florida just is pretty struggling right now.
Yeah. So I don't think it moves up that much, Lucky Ducks. I think if anything, it's you need a few dominoes to fall for that to start to move up anything, right? Like you need Miami to get a guy, you need a couple other schools to get a guy before it like really pushes that needle forward. So I don't think that one move really starts a domino effect that much.
Yeah. I think there are moves that could start a domino for him, but I don't know that
Sure.
anything to Florida would be that one. And I think it would have to be 2 dominoes to really speed things up for him. You know what I mean? Like if he has like a top 4 and 2 of them like real quick,
Yep.
let's say, Miami, because where's he? Trying to think of. I know he's
He's been
visiting
everywhere,
Miami.
man.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
that's true. That's very, very true, Ryan. Obviously Notre Dame. Because let's make this not just about Notre Dame, Ryan. Let's just make this about Brady Hart's recruitment in general.
Yep. Yep.
So Florida, Michigan just offered, but he's visited Penn State. He's visited
Yep.
Florida State. I know they're recruiting him, but let's say we looked at Brady Hart and we're like Notre Dame gets a commitment, in May, late May from someone that let's just say
Right.
Noah Grubb commits, and I'm not saying he's going to. I'm just trying to make a point. And
Sure.
then Florida State picks up a kid.
Right.
Could that maybe tell him, you know what, like, it's now down to basically like Miami and Penn State, Florida State. Or Miami and Penn State. I got to make a decision here pretty soon, unless unless my list is a lot bigger. So I could see some dominoes falling, but I think with both him and Noah Grubbs, it'd have to be more than one domino before that would really, really impact them. Because if anything, the dominoes that could fall is one or the other picks Notre Dame, and I think that would actually maybe slow their process down.
Right.
Honestly, because I would say right now, Ryan, if I had to put a meter on where things stand, I would say that Notre Dame is the leader for Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart. Is that fair?
Yeah, very fair. Yep. Yep.
So that would be the one that to me that would maybe potentially speed things up. Because again, guys, they know each other. They're going to probably know when the other one's getting ready to make a decision.
Oh, 100%.
And if they really want to be at Notre Dame, then the other one's going to be like, well, maybe I should speed this up a little bit. That's going to make for such an awkward situation if that happens, Ryan. It really is going to be interesting to see how that plays out behind the scenes.
And now that Noah Grubb's timeline is a little bit more firm as far as like when he's going to make a decision, I mean, I'm very interested to see how Brady Hart reacts to that. Does he react to that? Does he care? I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch.
Yep. And we are aware that both his parents played at Florida or went to Florida. His dad played football at Florida. Baseball at Florida. But again, Notre Dame's had kids that, both of I'm drawing a blank. Emmett Mosley's parents played at Notre Dame, and he didn't pick Notre Dame. Tom Carter's
I feel like we've
dad
seen that
played
more and
Notre Dame.
more. I think we've seen that more and more with players that are legacies, but choose not to follow the legacy because they kind of want to do their own thing. I think we've seen that more and more recently. So,
also, Tim Ruddy's not eligible for the conversation we were having earlier because Tim Ruddy was gone well before the 1997 cutoff date for that.
Yep.
So just a little heads up on that that aspect of it. All right, Ryan, let's keep rocking and rolling, man. We got some more down here. Let's get to let's keep going.
Dumber Grizz said, "Happy Friday. Can you please clarify what the actual rule is for grad transfers? I thought recently I read that they can no longer enter the portal whenever they want."
I'm not sure of that. I'm honestly up in the air on that because I didn't know that the rule had changed. I've seen people say that it's changed, but then I'm now seeing graduate players still jumping. Some kid
I thought they could still enter anytime.
But here's the thing, Ryan. What people have to understand is just because a kid is just being announced that he's in the portal now doesn't mean that he decided now because there's he may have submitted his paperwork the last day and his school just had a bunch of those to fill. And then once they submit their paperwork, then the NCAA's got to do this. And sometimes the kid may do it on May 1st, but then it doesn't get announced until whatever, because there's procedure to go through.
Well, that's why I was telling some people, I feel like it was in the chat or on the board. They were like, haven't heard many portal guys and all like announcements and stuff. I'm like, well, guys, this is the last day people can enter, but that doesn't mean that everything's been processed and they're going to announce everything right then, right? Like it is a little bit of a process. So, yep.
All right, good questions here, everybody.
We had Ida Benami says, sorry to bring this up again, but there is no way Notre Dame would allow Marcus Freeman to tweet, etc., like Dion, right? I feel like he would get in trouble by Notre Dame administration, rightfully so.
I don't see Notre Dame being fond of that, to be honest with you. But fortunately, I don't think it's something Notre Dame has to worry about. I just don't see Marcus Freeman. Most coaches aren't that way. Look, I don't like it. I've talked about this on the show before. I don't like it, but here's the reality. That's Deion being Deion. You have to understand that's kind of who he is. And so you're allowing him to be who he is. You have to allow him to be who he is. Also, if you're Colorado, you're a program that's striving for attention and striving for legitimacy. And sometimes it's that notion of, bad attention's better than no attention. And I don't agree with that. I don't like it. I'd rather not be known for that. But I mean, that's the package when you get, you can't hire a guy like Deion Sanders and say, okay, coach, we expect you to win, but you can't be yourself. That don't hire him, So I wish Coach Sanders would have conducted himself a little bit differently about certain things. A lot of the stuff he tweets about doesn't bother me. That's just Deion being Deion. And you need to, you should always be your authentic self to the degree to where you're not, just makes you if you're kind of a bad person, maybe your authentic self kind of sucks and you need to work on that. I don't believe that to be true about Coach Sanders. I think there are just things he needs to understand. Like, man, you're a head football coach now. You're a leader of men. You can't be that way. You need to be bigger than that and better than that. You can't emotionally tweet the way that a teenager does. But that's who he is. That's the reality of it. That's who he is. And I don't think Notre Dame would ever hire him for that reason. And if Marcus Freeman decided to start tweeting like that, then no, I don't think Notre Dame would be okay with that. I think that the AD would be in his office pretty quickly being like, hey, man, that's not okay. But at the end of the day, it's not something that we need to worry about because that's not who Marcus Freeman is. So no, he wouldn't act like that. It's not even a question about whether or not he would be like that. So let's go to here. We got Lucky Ducks 512. As Ryan gets back into the chat, we will kick this one over to him. Ryan, perfect timing.
Yes.
Lucky Ducks 512. Which top 2026 players is Notre Dame in a good position with outside of quarterback?
That's a great question, man. That's a really great question. I would say defensively, DJ Williams, the safety out of the state of Florida, would be a guy. The Carroll Day kid is a guy that they're in a pretty good position with early on. Defensively, I think you have to look at a couple of the local kids as well, like Mikhail Blade, the defensive lineman, Braden Jones. I think that they are in a pretty good, solid spot early on. Gabe Hill, they've all been to campus pretty recently. Thomas Davis Jr. At linebacker is a kid that visited this spring, and I think that they really did a great job with him. Obviously, it's going to be a tough one. Like, there's no doubt about it, especially if Georgia throws their hat into the fold, obviously with his dad playing at the University of Georgia. But Notre Dame's done a really good job with him so far. Joey O'Brien, the defensive back out of Pennsylvania. I think they're in a good spot.
Ryan, have you and I talked about him? Have you and I talked about him?
Yeah, I think we did.
You like him?
Yeah, it's long as heck. Super long.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
I think he's athletic. I think he's very underrated, but I also think he's a guy that could play multiple positions.
Yep.
If he can't stick a corner, he could go be a really good safety. He's not a bad receiver either. I think you were getting ready to say that, Ryan. He's not a bad wide receiver either, man. Like, that kid's a good.
That's pretty good.
Like, Ryan, there's just value in getting football players. Look, that's what Xavier Watts was. That's what Cam Hart was. Like, neither of those guys were recruited to play the position they became studs at. Right? Like Brian Smith and I were talking about this, and he took the question quite literally. I said, has Notre Dame ever recruited? When was the last time Notre Dame's recruited cornerback the way that they are? And he said, never. I said, really? You don't think like during Holtz's era when he was getting like Todd Light and Tom Carr? He's like, no, because none of those guys played cornerback in high school. So I got the point that he was making, because back then, you put your best player at running back or quarterback, and that's the point that he was making. But like, I was more referring to guys that played corner. But his point was valid, because back then it's like you just recruited. Lou Holtz would recruit like, and I do remember this, right? He'd sign like 5 or 6 running backs and then 3 or 4 quarterbacks every year. Now, a couple of the quarterbacks weren't going to play quarterback. That's just what they were. They were going to go play somewhere else. And they would sign like 6 or 7 linebackers every year, because you knew some of them were going to turn in. Bryant Young was recruited as a linebacker, 6'3", 240-pound linebacker. And he just there's a thing of you just need football players, man. And Notre Dame's doing more, in my opinion, just getting more. Just I don't know where he's going to play. Dallas Golden. Where's he going to play? Don't know, don't care. He's a football player. Figure it out. Get him on the field somewhere. And there's a lot more. Mark Zachary's got a little bit of that to him. Like, not that I think Mark can play offense at the same level he can play corner to the degree that Dallas can, but you watch that kid on offense, you're like, this kid's a dynamic high school wide receiver. Like,
I think Mark's really good at wide receiver. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want more guys like that. I want more football players. And like I was talking about this, was comparing the Notre Dame and Ohio State secondary classes. And I said, outside of one guy, I think it's a little bit of an overrated class at Ohio State because I just there's some guys I think are a little overrated. I think there's one kid that's very underrated. I said, but the one kid that I love, Naeem Offord, is a dude at corner. But he's just a corner, which is fine. He's a better corner than Dallas Golden right now. Dallas Golden's a better football player right now. Like that's the thing. And I want more guys like that. Notre Dame needs more guys like that for a host of reasons, not just fit, but attitude-wise, mentality-wise, you're that way, right? I was going to ask you this about 2026. Have you been able to get a gauge yet on kind of where they are with some early 26 receivers? Because you had mentioned earlier that's going to be the class that ultimately gives us our first real glimpse into what kind of recruiter Mike Brown is.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they have Dylan Faison that's already committed in the class. I think that there's a couple kids that definitely have high interest, but I do think there's a little bit of a wait and see mode with some of them, to be honest with you. Like, I think it is going to be dependent on what they see, right? Like, I mean, they're in the game with a couple kids. I mean, but again, I think that's more ask me mid-season and we'll have a much better conversation of like, hey, this is legitimate interest.
There's
this
some
is
dudes,
just
man.
Notre Dame. Oh yeah, there is. I mean,
didn't they go see Devin Carter this week as well? That's a guy that somebody was asking about in the chat. So there's some dudes on the board, but I think Ryan is correct that it's going to be let's see who visits this summer. Let's see who schedules fall visits, because like you said, there's a lot of interest from receivers in this class, just like there was in 25. There's a lot of interest from top players, but at the end of the day, Jamie French was interested. He visited Notre Dame, I think twice, right? But it's just like, okay, but no, they're barely throwing for 3,000 yards. I'm going to go over here where they're throwing the ball more. I mean, it looks like right now Texas is the leader. If you were a high school wide receiver that didn't grow up a Notre Dame fan, where are you going to go, Notre Dame or Texas? Let's be honest about that. You're going to go to Texas, right? I mean,
if I had to say a kid of wide receivers that I think Notre Dame has a good chance with at 2026 as of now. I mean, you mentioned like they went down and see Carter. I think Devin Carter is a kid that's definitely in that wait and see mode with the offense, right? The Clay kid, I think it's Jordan Clay out of Texas, is a kid that I think has a lot of interest. Yeah, he's already visited Notre Dame, and he's a 6'3", 180 plus, long. He kind of fits that mold, man, of like that, the high academic kids out of Texas that will give Notre Dame a legitimate look, right? So
even if they don't offer some of those other things. Yeah, it's a great point, Ryan. It's a great point. I don't think anything happened between French and Ohio State, Brandon. It's just schools keep jockeying for position. I believe he's still looking at Ohio State. It's just I think Texas is.
Yeah, I did read something. I did read something, and obviously I haven't talked to Jamie French in a while for obvious reasons, right? But I did read something similar recently that said that Ohio State has been a known for Jamie for a while, but they're kind of fading for whatever reason. Yeah. So I just that's what
I don't know that anything happens. Sometimes it's just kids like have better options. And I mean, I think there's a little bit clearer path to receiver at Texas right now than Ohio State, with some of the guys that they've signed recently, perhaps. Well, the other thing too is, who do you feel more confident in right now at the quarterback position? That's going to be another part of it as far as who right? Like it's who you know. I mean, Ohio State's got Julian Sain and Aaron Noland, and Texas they have Arch Manning, they have KJ Lacey. They've got their own guys too. And what's helped Ohio State in the past is they would always have the better quarterback option. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily the case right now, especially if you're a Southern kid. Because
I was going to say Jamie French knows those guys a lot more. He knows Arch and KJ Lacey, obviously, Alabama kid.
Exactly.
Yep.
And Julian Sain, great player. He's from California. It's a little different deal. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. So, but yeah, Texas is. I don't believe Ohio State's still the leader for Jamie French. I think
Yeah,
Archer just
like
said
I
Ohio
said,
State. I think the Ohio State people are the only people that feel that he still leads, that they still lead for him.
yeah.
But,
I
but Ohio
mean,
State's not
Archer.
getting out of it yet either, Ryan. I mean, they
Right.
they could come
Well,
back.
no,
and win
no. He's a top school for him still. I was just saying Archer that I had read something recently that the pulse was that Ohio State was kind of fading a little bit. So I could be wrong. I don't know. We'll see.
Yep. All right. I want to try to find another person. Here we go. I want to try to find a few that we haven't gotten to yet.
Brandon K says, "How do we feel about the gold patches in the released NCAA photo?" I mean, first of all, I love that the release photo was Notre Dame. Can we start with that? That was exciting for the 25.
Is that the only one that they?
Someone
is that
I've
the only
seen.
photo that they did? Okay.
I've seen like a couple. I've seen like some cover art stuff, but I haven't seen like an actual action shot of the game like that. So I thought that was really, really cool.
Let me find. I'm going to try to find it because I didn't notice the gold patch. I just kind of briefly saw it as I was getting ready to do the show. As Ryan knows, I've been in meetings
the
all day
the graphics look pretty good, man. To be honest, I was really excited about the graphics. I thought they looked nice. I mean, even just seeing the fans on the sideline and just kind of the realness of the face and everything. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really, really cool.
Is he talking about the gold patches on the sleeves?
Yeah, on the sleeve. You could see it on the side of one sleeve, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I think those look kind of sharp.
I thought they looked really good. I was going to tweet out and be a jerk and be like, "Hey, there's not even a number 63 on the Notre Dame roster, idiots." But I didn't feel like being that guy. So
that's because they didn't want to pay anybody for that particular photo. So you got to be careful. Like, what number is not being used right now? Boom, let's go with that one. Yeah. I thought I just looked at them and I thought those were sharp.
Yeah. Richard Head. It's great. It's great. You know, it's funny. I went to Rowan. You probably know this, but Rowan Stadium is called Richard Wacker Stadium. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Richard Wacker Stadium. So there you go, folks.
Happy Friday. I think I told you that, right? They beat us by a point because we missed 3 freaking extra points. Kickers.
Yeah. So Richard Wacker Stadium, great stadium, guys. Richard Head says, "Happy Friday. Who has more sacks this season, Boubacar Traore or Keon Keeley?"
I'd probably go Boubacar because I think Boubacar's closer to playing right now, don't you, Ryan? I mean, Keon's.
I looked at the depth chart before we got on, and right now Keon is listed as the 3rd team defensive end right now for Alabama. Obviously, that could change, but
I saw one that had him 4th. So look, here's my thing about Keon in Alabama, and I've said this from the beginning. I don't think it was a good fit for him football-wise. And when I mean football-wise, I'm not talking about their track record. I'm talking about his style, his skill set fitting into what they do defensively. I didn't think it was as smooth of a transition for him that it would have been, because I don't view him as a hybrid linebacker. I don't view him as a Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell type as much as I view him as a pure Isaiah Foskey, come off the edge, down like lineman. You know what I mean?
Hybrid,
and that's
hand in the dirt guy. Yep.
Right. And he could play in a 2-point stance the way that Notre Dame does it, because it's as a true end. You know, that occasionally, 20 times a year you drop underneath the hook curl or drop into the flats or something. That's really it. But I just felt that the Notre Dame fit was better for him. And I understand, the better track record, developing linemen and all this kind of stuff. It is what it is. But, now those people that developed that are gone, and he's still in a defense that even now with the new defensive staff, I still don't think he fits what they do, because Washington was more of a, pure 3-down team. They didn't bring that D coordinator, got somebody else who I believe is a 3-down kind of hybrid type of guy as well. So I'd have to study that defense a little bit more, but I just think Boubacar is a better fit for the Viper than what Keon is and what they do on defense at Alabama. So
Keon, come home, baby. Come home. Still love you. Still love you.
I would not have a problem with that. That's for sure.
Not at all. Not at all. Ballpeen Shalele says, "If IB had a poker night with all the staff, who would end up the night with a fat wad of cash?"
Well, we know who it won't be, Ryan.
Who's
we know who it won't be. Me.
Oh,
because
I thought you were making a joke because I go to bed so early.
No. Well, that would be So poker night with the staff, Ryan would be like, "Guys, we got to start at like 5:00 because by 9 I'm in bed." But no, I honestly don't. I've played poker a couple times with friends and family, and it's not playing for actual cash. I have to have a cheat sheet on what beats what next to me, because I've just never.
I'm pretty good at poker. I'm pretty good at poker.
I'd be good at like bluffing and stuff, but like when you have to, although I did kind of use that to bluff a few times, but I would be terrible because I wouldn't know necessarily what beats what and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I
My-
I don't play poker. I've only played it maybe twice in my entire life, so I'd probably get taken to the
I- I-
cleaners.
I'd probably be very competitive. I would probably pick Vince just because he's kind of a snake. So I could see him
You
being
know, he'd
really
be
good at
laughing and
poker.
joking and having fun and
Yeah.
that deep belly laugh, that Italian laugh, and then all of a sudden you're like looking down like, "Ooh, how do you get all the chips, man?" You know?
Flush.
Yeah.
Like, all right,
Yeah.
cool. Screw you,
He'd be
Vince.
making a joke and tell us a story about something that happened at school, and we're all like engaged. Oh, by the way, Full House. So yeah, so what
Yeah.
happened? You know, yeah, he would get us. He would get us.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would get us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Stires probably doesn't play poker. I doubt if Stires plays poker.
You know what would be
Doubt it.
funny is it would not shock me if Stires is the one that we found out was the best poker player of all of us. Because
He
isn't
would
that
probably-
kind of how it is? The guy that you least think would be that
Yeah.
guy is the one that
Yeah.
ends up being the shark.
I think the one good thing that I think with Stires with poker is I think he would have a good poker face. I don't know if he would show too much emotion towards things.
Yes.
Right. Like, yeah, he would have a
Yes.
good poker face.
That's
I think.
another reason why I think you and I might not be great poker players, Ryan, because we're both very expressive. You know, so
Yeah.
I'd have to master my
Well, I'm very sarcastic though, so some people can't tell if I'm being
Yeah.
Truthful or not sometimes because I
Yeah.
just have a very sarcastic tone to my voice.
not what
but-
you say, I read your face.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
like my wife has always said, my wife knows exactly how I feel just by looking at my face. I've always been that
Yeah.
way. I'm like, well, stop looking at my face then. I haven't said anything, but your face. Well, then don't look at my face whenever we're having an argument. Okay, just turn around, look the other way.
I would just be stone faced and I wouldn't even say anything. I would just be like,
Yeah,
"Good, we're good."
I have a buddy Jason who's a really who plays a lot of poker and stuff. I'd probably have to cheat and get him on like my AirPods and or get some kind of camera he can see what I've got and help me out. So Jason, if we ever have an IB poker night, man, I'm going to need your help because I can't get taken to the cleaners by my staff, man. That would be pretty terrible, pretty embarrassing. So
Yeah.
can't do that, Ryan. Can't do it.
I would destroy Sean Davis and Jesse Stires though. Destroy them. They have no chance. No chance. Jacob Hayden, I'm all in on Coach Marcus Freeman, but I'm curious why he hasn't stepped in and overruled Al Washington on some of his bad recruiting decisions and position changes on current rosters.
Well, for one, it could be that he agrees with them. I mean, that we have to leave that as a possibility. Number two, look, guys, we've said this from day one. Marcus Freeman's going to let his coaches coach, and to a degree, I understand that. The reality is, I don't think Al Washington at any point in time is an abusive coach. I don't think he's doing the things that he should have stepped in and stopped Chancey Stuckey from doing and those type of things. It's just things that we don't necessarily agree with. And, I think that's kind of where I'm at. So, and I think the other part of it too is you can't overrule a position like a position coach on recruiting to a degree, because if the guy doesn't want to coach the guy and he's adamant he doesn't want to coach the guy, then you kind of have to let that be, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
Right. I mean, those situations end up being terrible if you take too many kids that you don't want to coach, right? I mean, that's not usually a good situation. So, I mean, they have to have, like, he has to have pull in who he wants in his defensive line room, just has to have it. So, there might have to be conversations, Jacob, at times about, like, hey, I think we need to look more toward this kid, or we need to kind of take a second look here. But, I mean, Brian's right. Like, we don't know what's going on in Marcus Freeman's head. He might agree with a lot of that's happening. I have no idea.
And
So,
end of the day, guys, we don't agree with what Al Washington's doing in certain areas, but we also have to say, let's let it play out, because he may be right. He may turn out to be right. The decision, Joseph Reif may turn out to be a much better player than Javion Campbell. Could happen, right? Maybe Dom Hulak does go to Viper and he ends up being a better player than Marco Jones. We can agree and disagree with it, but I don't want to turn it into he needs to be fired because, like, let's see if he's right or wrong first with something. He hasn't gotten the time to prove that yet. I'm not justifying it or explaining it away, but I'm like, we have to be honest and say, hey, y'all know how I feel about Al Washington as a recruiter. Y'all know that. But we have to at least say, okay, but let's give him a little bit of time to see if maybe we're wrong on that. Because I didn't think taking Kyron Williams made a ton of sense at the time when they took him in 2019 class. I was like, there just were better players on the board. Well, guess what? They were right. They were right on that one, and it worked out great. So that's the other thing too, Ryan, is we also have to have a little bit of, okay, we stated our opinion, but maybe Marcus Freeman and Al Washington see something we don't. And we have to hope that if that's the case, that they're right about that. That's the thing, Ryan, and I know you're on the same page on that. Whenever we don't think a kid can play or we think Notre Dame's making the wrong decision, 100% of the time, those are cases that we hope that we're wrong and that the Notre Dame staff is right. 100% of the time.
It's just very it's very troubling because I'm usually not wrong. So, you know.
Good God. Speaking of that sarcasm thing, well, actually, I don't know if that was sarcasm. Ryan, I want you to answer this one here first this week. You take a shot at this one from my dude Zach Martin. Haven't seen you in a while, Zach, so I'm glad to see you in the chat today, man.
Well, it's the offseason now, so he's not playing offensive line in the NFL anymore. So Zach says Friday football free-for-all is back. As former coaches, what was your favorite pregame routine ritual moment that either got you on your position group in the right frame of mind? As a former coaches, so like I used to like to be isolated in pregame, right? Like as far as like not directly with the team, like when I'm doing pregame warmups or whatever, and we're going through position specific stuff. But Zach, I kind of fundamentally, like from a ritual perspective, I'd like to kind of get into a mindset I had when I played. So I was a big like lock out the noise, music in my mind, in my headspace, and we'll figure it out from there type of thing, right? And then once I kind of believed in relaxation and then build up pregame, right? Then you get on the field, you're warming up with the team, first drill. All right, now we're getting a little bit more. Now we're getting a little bit more. And then the climax at the end, obviously, of you're in the huddle with everybody at the end after you scored the touchdown or whatever pregame or whatever you guys do from a just real ritual perspective. That's when you really start to get amped and the adrenaline starts kicking in. So I was a very relaxed, ritualistic type of person. Steady build up. There's got to be a steady rise in pregame for me. And then at that point, it's go time, baby. It's go time.
Ryan, for me, it was as a player, it was just getting in a calm place of mind. But as a coach, my pregame routine ritual was that moment where you get them together after everything is done and you give that little final pep talk, to really send them out there. Cause I always felt like it's not going to be the difference, they're not ready. And all of a sudden, hey, we said this. And so the unprepared guys are going to go out there. But I think it's one of those things that can give you that little final push on where you need to be. I do believe that. I do believe that. So definitely believe that one. So let's get to this next one, Ryan. I'm going to let you start off this one, and then I need to do something real quick that we talked about before. So go ahead and handle this one.
Broke Neck Boy, what's up, man? I want the smoke triple option IP NCAA 2025 Dynasty League. Broken Neck Boy, I feel like we've talked about this together before on this channel, I believe, literally in a podcast. I'm telling you, sir, you don't want it. I promise you. Look, I am not going to pretend to be great at every single video game I play. I'm pretty solid at Madden. I'm not great. I'm good, though. I'm a good Madden player, okay? I'm a good Madden player. Pretty good at NBA. Not bad. Show, excellent. Very good at the show. MLB The Show. And NCAA, not a chance, man. Unless they completely just redirected and reprogrammed everything that I remember from the game as far as functionally in the game, right? Controlling it, there's zero chance. Like literally zero chance you're going to beat me. Zero. We can do this, man. We can do the online. We can do the Dynasty League. If anybody else in IB Nation wants the smoke too, we could do that, man. We might have to, what we need to do? We could do this. We could stream these games. We're going to do that. I'm making an executive decision right now because I have the power for this second. We're streaming these games. And Broke Neck Boy, you're the first victim. You're the first victim, my friend. So strap up. Get ready to go. Let's do it. Let's do it, man. I'm ready. Archer, you don't want it either. Nobody here wants it, man. Look, if you don't want me to play with triple option, it's fine. I'll still bring the smoke. Still bring it. All right. So let's get it. I want to do it, man. I want to do it. Love it. But Broke Neck Boy, stop talking that work, man. It's coming for you. I'm a PlayStation guy. I saw that in the chat. I played on Xbox occasionally, but I never actually had an Xbox. That was more over friends playing Xbox type of situation. I was definitely a PlayStation guy. So, yeah. Jay Payton says, is the decline on Derek Meadows more of a Notre Dame issue or other teams doing a better job? So I would phrase it like this. Okay. So this is a great question, Jacob. Look, Notre Dame is still in it, right? But obviously some SEC teams, Alabama, one big one, have made a strong charge at Derek Meadows. So basically where we're at here is this. For a long time, it was Notre Dame and Washington that were the two teams. Okay. The two teams. Once Kalen DeBoer left, Notre Dame was the assumed leader. But this is always the vibe I've gotten from Derek Meadows. It is not to the degree of a Damian Shanklin, but I do think he was very patient throughout this recruiting process because he wanted to see all the options on the table. And now he has a lot more options on the table. And I still think Notre Dame has a chance, but I do think that they were the team that was higher on the hierarchy because he had a smaller offer list early. Once it blew up, I feel like the gaps have not only closed, I do think that Notre Dame is now trying to struggle to get back on top, right? So I think, unfortunately, things are trending away from Notre Dame and trending positively for a couple other programs. And I would never call Notre Dame a placeholder for Derek Meadows. I don't think it's quite to that degree. Like honestly, Damian Shanklin, Notre Dame was a placeholder for Damian Shanklin for a while. They were a placeholder. That was his best option. Once the other options came, it was over for Notre Dame. I don't think it's that to that degree of Derek Meadows, but I do think that Derek Meadows was very patient with this process and wanted all options to be on the table. So now that he can make a more, I don't deliberate, but like a more in-depth decision, right? He has a lot more options on the table than he once did. Notre Dame has a shot, but I think that it is trending away from Notre Dame currently. Can they flip it around? We'll see. And I hope they can.
I want to say this too, Ryan. I don't know if you, I was handling what you and I talked that I need to handle here beforehand, but I don't know if you said this part, but I want to remind people too that this is why we tell you to listen to what we're telling you and not get wrapped up in the crystal ball thing. Because when a lot of people were crystal balling Notre Dame for Derek Meadows, and that's why some of you believe Notre Dame was in this great position, Ryan was saying on the premium board, I don't actually think that's where it is. I actually think Washington is the leader for him right now. This is back when Kalen DeBoer was still at Washington.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time since Irish Breakdown has said that we thought Notre Dame was the leader for Derek Meadows. I think they were when they offered him after the Irish invasion, they were the leader because they were really the biggest school that's pushing for him. But for a while there, Ryan, you felt like Washington was actually a little ahead of Notre Dame. And then when that staff left, I think Notre Dame kind of moved into the first place by default. Then that quickly changed. But it was never because he had this deep passion for wanting to be at Notre Dame. And I'm not saying that's a negative on the kid. He's been very open and honest about this with Notre Dame. Not one point in time in this entire recruitment, Ryan, has anyone that I talked to that's associated with this recruitment ever told me that he has in any way misled Notre Dame into thinking he likes them more than he does. Never heard that. So this isn't a knock on Derek Meadows. It's just I don't think they were ever the leader that the way that it was made out to be, in my opinion. Maybe at the very beginning when they were the big dog in that one. And then his recruitment started to take off a little bit, and he rightfully said, I want to do this process right. And again, if you're a big-time receiver and you're looking at Kalen DeBoer's offense or Georgia or Texas or teams like that in Notre Dame's got a lot to prove. But can I say this too, Ryan? Let's not act like if kids pick other schools, it's over. If Notre Dame goes out this year and balls out on offense and Riley Leonard's as good as Ryan and I think that he is, and the receivers do what we think they're going to do, and Jaden Greathouse goes off and Chris Mitchell does his things, or Bo Collins does his thing, and Jordan Faison, let's not act like Notre Dame can't get back in the mix with some of these kids, and I promise you they will be doing that. If Taylor Taylor picked Georgia tomorrow and Derek Meadows picked Alabama tomorrow, the only way Notre Dame stops talking to those kids is if they say, stop calling me. That's it. And then they'll start calling the parents. That's it. So, I mean, it's not over. It doesn't mean that they're going to get those guys or flip those guys, but they're not going to give up the fight on these guys, Ryan, either. That's the other part of it as well.
Yeah, I would agree. We had, always want to call him the YouTube user. We got Salty Virginia Peanuts. Irish Breakdown. Did you prefer to keep your high school number in college, and how big of a deal was it to you?
Well, so Ryan, I had two different numbers in high school. I had 7 and then 9. And the reason I went to 9 so I was a 7 at Kempsville. And then when I transferred to Atlantic Shores, they didn't have a 7. So I went to 9. And so when I went to college, I wanted 7, but my freshman year that was taken. So I went with 8. And then when I transferred to Salisbury, 7 was available and I took it because I always wanted, that was the number I wanted. And so, yes, it was my high school number, but it's the number I always wanted because obviously it was John Elway's number. But yeah, it's kind of a big deal to me. Like would I pick a school based on the availability of the jersey number? No. Would my emotional well-being of within the program be tied to the jersey number? No. Did it matter to me in the way that like I had a sentimental attachment to it? For me, sure, it did. It did. And for some, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Give me number 62 for all I care. Just let me go ball. But for me, I was a quarterback. I was a bit of a pretty boy. And, I was one of the look good, feel good, play good type of guys. And so it mattered to me. And for other guys that did not care. So it's different for each guy. But for me, yeah, trying to get to number 7 was important for me in college.
So in high school, I only wore number 50, and I had to wear number 50 because I needed a lineman number because I also had to play left tackle.
Oh,
so I
that's
played
true.
defense and offensive line. So I had to do both those duties there. When I went to college, the one year I played, I wore number 44. I had some shoulder injuries that I've talked about before, so I kind of stepped away and just was a regular student type of situation. But I did play semi-pro football for a couple years just to kind of get back into the swing of it, tackle football, and I wore 44 there as well. So I would have wore 44 as often as I possibly could, but number 50 was the number that I had to wear in high school because I had to play offensive line as well.
There you go. Brandon Plus, did you have that pretty boy swag? Yeah, to a degree, I did. I mean, like when I played receiver my freshman year, I had like remember, because that was back when Charles Woodson was really good. He had like the wristbands over his elbows, and I had my gloves when we were live playing, I would strap my gloves up. When we were going through pregame, I'd have them flipped up, and I had like the diamond earrings, and yeah, nice. I didn't go crazy with it, but yeah, I had a little bit of pretty boy. Here's the funny thing is, I still had the same haircut. This hasn't changed. This has stayed the same, but yeah. That would be I would never call myself a pretty boy because like the way that I dress now, Ryan, t-shirts and sweats and hoodies, that's how I dressed then. So when I got pretty was when I got on the football field, and I wouldn't call it pretty, but yeah, I mean, again, look good, feel good, feel good, play good. I mean, I did believe it. For me, that worked for me. It didn't, same with baseball. Like I had a certain look that I wanted to have because I liked that look and it made me feel good. And I was going to go out there and, and play good. So that's just, it's ridiculous, but that's kind of how I
was a D head when I played. Okay. So I was a linebacker that wore a butterfly collar and had my wrist taped. That was my swag, I guess. That's all I had. No gloves most of the time too. No gloves most of the time. So I was a D head. But it works. Bill Romanowski. That's what I was going for. I was going for Bill Romanowski.
You didn't spit on people though, did you?
Not that everyone ever saw.
See, Bill's mistake was he did something that every linebacker does, but he made the mistake of doing it while they were standing face to face. Whole different animal, man.
Yeah.
There are things that you can do.
I never spit on anybody, but
Ryan will tell you this. There's things you can do in a pile that if you did it anywhere else on the planet, outside of war, you're getting punched or in a fight.
Oh, well, so, that's why playing semi-pro was awful because I played against an offensive lineman that was probably in his late 30s, and he was just like trying to stay on, and he would just wail on your ribs, man, the entire play. It's just like, bro, get the heck out of my face, man. Get out of my face.
What is your deal? I want to before we bring this one up, Ryan, I want to respond to some salacious things being said about me in the chat. I'm saying sarcastically. Salty said, didn't Brian have a weird haircut or frosted tips at one time? So let me address these both, Salty. I've had this haircut since I was basically 16. Okay, 15, 16. Every now and then I'll let it grow out, but Ryan, you've seen it. I'll let it lay down and occasionally part it over, but pretty much this has been my haircut for the last 30 years of my life. One time in high school, a friend of mine, Laura Brew, convinced me to let her dye my hair for senior trip. I asked my parents. They weren't happy about it. They said I could do it. And so I did it. I only had earrings for a year in college because I went to a Christian school my last 2 years to play football, and they didn't let you wear earrings. So, but I dyed my hair for a month, and it was about this long, maybe a little bit longer. And once it grew out, I shaved it off and it was back to being brown, but I never had frosted tips. That is erroneous, slanderous, kind of thing to say there. I never did the frosted tips. That was never going to be something that I would do ever.
I never did frosted
For
tips
me.
either. I think that was a little before my generation, the frosted tip thing.
Yes.
So never did frosted
Yes.
tips. We were more the Mohawk generation, but I never had a Mohawk.
Oh.
But I think we were more the Mohawk
Same here.
generation.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
dude, Ryan, 30 plus years I've had this haircut. It's the tried and true, man. It's tried and true. You know what I love about this haircut, Ryan? Here's what I
Yep.
love about it. I don't have to do anything with it.
Right. Just out of the shower and you're good to go. Yep. I get it. I
Yep.
get it. Zach Nichols with a super chat. For Sean Davis, not here today. Ryan Roberts, end the chat. Why is this for me? This is not my type of question. Is it just me, or does Drake run OVO like Chancey Stuckey runs a wide receiver room?
I don't know what OVO is. I don't know what's going on with whatever battle that I see people tweeting about with Drake and Kendrick Lamar.
Just
There's
a bunch
so
of
many
diss tracks, right? Isn't that all
Don't
that's happening?
care.
It's just diss stuff?
Man, bro,
Yeah.
there's so much stuff going on in our world right now that I don't give two rips about Kendrick Lamar and Drake's probably fake beef so they can both sell records for all I know. I don't care. So Sean Davis would be a much better person to speak on that, because I'm only aware of this beef because Sean's tweeting about it. If Sean wasn't tweeting about it, I'd have no clue.
Yeah, it's a lucky
lot of
lefty
people don't-
question. Lucky
Yeah,
lefty question.
grew up listening to rap. I don't listen to rap anymore. It's been a while. Every now and then when I need to get really pissed off, I'll pop in some Nas or some Tupac, but I really try to not have that into my mind and soul anymore. But I stopped listening to rap, like new rap. Like I'm that old guy that like stopped around 2002, and just that's when raps ended for me. And so I still listen to everything then and before. That's kind of where I'm at. So like people start talking about Kendrick Lamar. I'm like, I've heard one Kendrick Lamar song, and it was I don't even know I heard a song of his. I listened to him rap in halftime of the Super Bowl, and that's it. Like
we listened to a little. As a collective, my group listened to a little bit of Kendrick after high school, but I'm just not a huge rap guy overall. So
yeah. So I'm not. What is OVO, like his company or something?
No idea what OVO is. No. That's why I was confused why I was asked this, man. This is
his crew. Indeed, yeah. I don't know what that means. So yeah.
Zach, I feel bad, man. You just paid a super chat for absolutely no information. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I feel bad because you start talking about like the feud between Pac and Big. I lived that one. Like that one, I cared about that one at the time because I was, a teenager. And I didn't realize I didn't have as many real life important things to worry about like I do now. But
it's Drake's label, apparently. Yeah. People are saying in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry, guys. I wish I had more for you, Zach. I feel bad, but we appreciate it anyway.
Tommy Guns with a question. What's up, Tommy? Could this year's receiver class be akin to Mickens' first cornerback class, with the thought that receiver recruiting drastically upgrades moving past this next class? Hope so.
I don't know if it is or isn't, Ryan, but it's a good thought. I mean, I like where his head's at. I mean, not that it's okay, but look, Mike Mickens took some guys in that class I liked, but they were always kind of low floor, high ceiling guys. I liked Ryan Barnes, but he was always he's here and he's got to get here, and how's the COVID year going to impact it? I liked Philip Riley, but I thought, he might be a little bit more of a nickel slot guy. Could his speed project? Wasn't as high on Chance Tucker, but I said at the time, I thought he might be the kid that makes me look bad. And I think, and the other thing too, is like, from what I've been told, Ryan Barnes might've had a chance to play at Notre Dame. The problem was he just happened to come right before they went out and got Benjamin Morrison and all those guys. And so when you recruit the way that he's recruited that position, you're going to have some guys that are pretty good football players that don't pan out. Like Micah Bell. Look, I heard good things about Micah Bell from the Notre Dame staff and people that I know. But the reality is he was going to be in a dogfight. And if he was going to have a tough time holding off a guy like Dallas Golden, for example, because Mike is an extremely talented, Ryan, but as you saw firsthand when you saw him face to face, super raw, right?
Yeah.
Where,
small.
Yeah. And in the slot, you can get away with that. Like he's not smaller than Jordan Clark. But to your point, Ryan, Jordan Clark's advanced technically, mentally, fundamentally. And so Micah might have had a chance to be a dude at Notre Dame. down the road.
Yeah.
But there was also always going to be that chance, because how raw he was, that somebody was going to come along like a Benjamin Morrison, the next Christian Gray, the next Dallas Golden perhaps, and say, I'm just ready to play now, though. You don't need to develop me. That's a good place to be. This isn't a knock on my – I'm not going to I was wrong on Michael Bell. No, we always thought he was going to need time to develop. It's just that after a year, it became pretty apparent that he was going to have a tough time climbing up the depth chart because of how loaded they are there. That's going to happen. And when you're recruiting, when you start recruiting the way you need to be a championship team, that becomes common everywhere. Well, this guy's not a bad football player, but he just got beat out by somebody that's just better. You're like, if Kenny Minchie never plays a down at like a meaningful snap at Notre Dame, does that mean that our evaluation of him was wrong? Maybe. It could also mean that, well, a guy that we thought was even better beat him out. Doesn't mean the other guy wasn't good. That happens all the time. I mean, Jalen Hurts got beat out by Tua at Alabama, goes to Oklahoma, and balls out. Did Alabama make a mistake? No, they started the better player, and you had two really good players. It's just going to happen sometimes.
It's like the Brock Wright situation as well. Like Brock Wright, it's kind of a similar thing.
Turns out Brock Wright was a pretty good football player.
Yeah,
just was in a depth chart with other really good football players that maybe whether they got a better shot, maybe they were better fits, who knows? But that just happens sometimes. But with the question he's asking here, though, Ryan, I need to see how it finishes first, because if they get like Tanook Hines and maybe a Dylan Robinson, I think this receiver class is going to be better than that cornerback class was. Like, if you've got Dylan Robinson, Tanook Hines, Elijah Burris, Sean Terry, and Jerome Bettis Jr., is that an elite receiver core? No, it's not. Is that like a Taylor who? No, I'm not there. That's not. But could this be a group where these guys are a part of what you're doing down the road, whether it's a number 1 and number 2 and number 3? Yeah, there's some good football players there to where I don't know that you're closing the gap with this group, Ryan, but you're not letting it widen if you can land two guys like that. So let's see how it finishes first. But to your point, Tommy, I think you're also speaking to what Ryan said earlier, which is you just can't fall way behind in 25, but the class that really starts to show the chops is going to be 26. Because two reasons, right, Ryan? Number 1, you have a season on the field to prove what you can do. And number 2, you have a full cycle to where you're the one that determines who you go after, and you're the one that builds your relationships. You don't have to worry about that weird in-between time during a coaching change.
Sure.
That's kind of really what it is
and
for me.
It will ease my hesitancy as well if they're able to get Dylan Robinson and Tanook Hines down the stretch. Like, that's a couple really nice wins kind of later in the process, right? So that would make me feel a lot better. I'm a little bit, what's the word? Hesitant's not the right word. I'm worried that a coach that has come from Cincinnati and Wisconsin that had to look for different types of dudes for Cincinnati and Wisconsin, because you're naturally going to go after guys that are a little bit more of developmental guys and guys you have to coach up. I think this strategy at Notre Dame needs to be a lot different than that, is kind of my thing. Because look, if you take 5 kids that are projects, and I'm not saying Dylan Robinson and Tanook fit into that mold, but let's say you take 5 kids that are more of a projection and you need to develop them. Do I believe in Mike Brown as a developer? Yes. But also, if you take more of those kids, there's more likelihood that they're not going to work out as well. Like, you need to find a mix of those types, right? So that's kind of what I'm interested to see, is just kind of from 2026 from scratch, what types are you really pursuing, right, heavily, and not trying to just find projects. I hope that that's not the best way to go about that. So we'll see.
That is a great point, Ryan. And it's always kind of that concern you have when you have a guy that comes from a lower level. I mean, it was a concern we had about Mike Mickens, when he came. We know the guy can coach, but can he recruit? Sure. And that's where I like Tommy's point. Well, that first class would make you think, is this guy that he's always going to just look for the projects, or is he going to go out and find some dudes? Well, when he got Benjamin Morrison and Jaden Mickey the next class, you're like, okay, these aren't projects. These are dudes, right? I mean, I didn't view Benjamin Morrison as a project. I know you didn't view Benjamin Morrison as a project. I had Benjamin Morrison as a top 100 player from day one with 5-star upside, day one. And then the next year you go out and get Christian Gray and Micah Bell. Micah's a little bit of a project, but he's a project that ran a 4.3. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind. And so he has shown, even guys like Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs, to me, are not projects. They're
Yeah.
guys that, that are good football players. Carson physically, I think Carson could probably come in and play day one physically,
Mhm.
like size, strength, speed. Is he going to have the technique? We'll find out. But, what I like, there was that little dip from the year before, Brian, but it's not that long ago, a two-man duo of Carson Hobbs and Leonard Moore. We're doing backflips at Notre Dame, getting that duo. And now we're like, yeah, it's good, but it wasn't as good as the last 2 years. 4 years ago, we're like, oh my gosh, this recruiter's legit. He got Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's amazing how quickly he reset the expectations of cornerback recruiting. That, just real quick to Henry Reese's comment. I didn't stop listening to rap. I don't listen to a lot of music that's not like, I'm going to play spiritually, where I'm just trying to, what comes in is going to be what comes out. What I'm saying is, like, every person hits that point in their life, and some people hit it later, where you just stop listening to everything that comes out now, and you become that old dude that's like, in my day. That's where I'm at with rap music. It's just like, I grew up what I believe was the pinnacle of the art form, and I believe rap is an absolute art form. And it just is kind of like, it's not going to get any better than this. So why do it? I'm just going to stay in this lane and still enjoy this. Because guess what? Listening to Nas hasn't gotten old for me. Listening to podcasts hasn't gotten old. Listening to Wu-Tang hasn't gotten old for me. And there's nothing that I see out there that's better than that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. When I do listen to rap, it's that. But I don't listen to a lot of music anymore, just for different reasons, spiritual reasons, and things along those lines, but also time and edification. But yeah, I'll admit, Ryan, I'm that dude. I've become that old guy. My dad was that way. I'd listen to R&B when I was a high school kid, and I'd have to listen to my dad tell me how, well, you don't know music. Let me talk about the Four Tops and the Temptations and Smokey Robinson. I'm like, I don't care about all that mess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, that was my dad. There came a point in time where my dad's like, anything after this, don't care about. This is it, right? Because I've told people that's how I got into really that genre of music, was growing up listening to my mom's Al Green records and my dad's Temptation records and things like that. So you get that sort of type of music around you, but it was formative for me, where for my dad, it was defining. You know what I mean? So that music was formative. I'd listen to it like, oh, I get this. This is good. And then that took me to where I became this. And so, when hip hop first came along, I'm like, it was natural for me, because of what I grew up listening to, me, that I was going to gravitate to that. And then I believed that I was alive in the peak of something, and it just was never going to be better than that. And to me, it hasn't been. I'm not saying it may never will be. So that's where I have hit that peak phase when it comes to music for me. And that's why I just kind of stopped. Because that's true even before I kind of stopped listening to music, period. Before I'm in the phase I am now, I still stop listening to new rap. The only time I listen to rap, Ryan, is at Notre Dame practices, because they're playing it over the speakers during practice. And I'd be, what in the world is this mess? And I realized I was that old guy. I was that guy. I'm like, I'm that old guy that's like, what are these kids listening to? Like, I've become that guy. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, I just like me and my friends have a group chat where we just randomly sometimes text each other some really weird rap lyrics. That's just kind of my favorite that I've ever heard is she got a big booty, so I call her Big Booty. That's my favorite one of all time. It's really lyrical, man. Really lyrical stuff that we listen to.
Right.
So yeah.
All righty. There we go. We're gonna move on.
I didn't write it.
Back to Notre Dame football.
I'm not a lyricist, man. I didn't write it. Didn't write it. Oh gosh, Wyatt Kerwin, of the Notre Dame players you have seen, who would literally my buddy texted me that one day, and I was like, oh, okay, that's fun. Of the Notre Dame players, really just poetic, really. Of the Notre Dame players you have seen, who would your top 5 players on offense and defense that maybe didn't have elite size and or athleticism, but they had a dog mentality and were dudes on the field?
Well,
top 5 offense.
I'll kick off with one for you, Ryan, that I know you're going to love. And whenever I think of undersized, good athlete, but not elite athlete, but just a dog,
great
Tom
boxer.
Zibikowski. That's the first guy that pops in my head is Zibikowski. He was that guy. He was undersized. He, all those type of things. So that's one that pops in my head for sure. Joey Getherall was very tiny guy. very good player. Chris Finks won that.
Chris
I
Finks
would
is
throw
good.
that. He wasn't a dude, but like he was a walk-on. He was a good athlete. He ran like a 4.57 at the pro day. That's not elite. That dude just know how to get open, man. Like he just was a good football player. Jerome Sapp. I don't know if you remember him. Bobby Howard. It's a good
Safety.
linebacker
Yeah, I remember.
one.
Yeah.
Not Bobby Howard. Bobby Howard was one, but I'm Brandon Hoyt is who I'm thinking. Is exactly.
Oh, Brent Hoyt. Brent Hoyt was a
Yeah.
good player. Yeah.
Very undersized though, Ryan. Not an elite athlete, but he was a dude. I mean, he was a good football player.
Derek Landry. Derek
Landry's a good one.
Me.
Yep.
He was not that talented, but he was a dude.
Yep. And not very big either. He was
small.
undersized. Played in the NFL for a long Allen. Yeah. Well, I won't say Allen Rossum because Allen Rossum could flat out fly. So I don't know. Shane Walton. Somebody said Shane Walton. That's a good one. He was a great athlete, though. He just wasn't fast. But Shane Walton was a great athlete. He just wasn't fast.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, somebody said Golden Tate. I see Golden Tate was short, but Golden Tate was thick. So I don't know that size was necessarily an issue for him. And he could jump so good. I'm trying to think of some more guys that didn't have elite size. Theo Riddick, not a great athlete, not great size, but just he was going to give you everything he had, man. He was just going to be that guy for you.
Well,
I think he was an all-time
Darius Walker. Darius Walker wasn't like overly athletic, but he was a good player, man. He
wasn't very big either. I don't know if you've ever met Darius, but he's not. He's like me. Like
he was like 200 pounds, right?
Me and Darius might have like some family back in the day because we both have giant heads, like literal giant heads. He's got a very big head, but no, he's not really that big. So like a bunch of that weight, I think, is like up in the cranial area up here.
Yeah,
but no, he's not that big of a guy.
I thought he was like 5'10", 200, and I know he wasn't like a fast player at all or anything like that. Yeah. No.
Maybe like if he grew his hair out, he's 5'10", maybe. But to your point though, Ryan, real good football player.
Oh, no doubt.
And I know that he's remembered for going out of bounds against USC, but we also have to forget he played really well in some big games. He played very well against Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl that year. He was the only guy on offense that played well against LSU in the Sugar Bowl. He rushed for 100 yards in that game. He's the only guy that showed up and played well. So
I like Darius Walker.
I did too.
Kane Madden.
Oh, goodness gracious. What was the name of it? Some of y'all older cats help me. Was it Rick? Was it Kaczynski? How do you pronounce his last name? There was a center that Notre Dame had that was like 260 back in the 2000s. That was an undersized guy, but a really good player. He was another guy that I liked a lot. So those, just off the top of my head, those are some guys that kind of pop into my head a little bit. And no, Golden Tate was not recruited as a running back. He played running back in high school. He played both. But he was always recruited as a receiver. Yeah, he was always recruited as a receiver. So, there's been a couple guys like that. There's another defensive. You could argue Kurt Heidt
former
those, Ryan.
Yeah,
Kurt. Yeah. I mean, he had to grow into a 300-pounder. He was like 270 when he first started playing, and Notre Dame was a true freshman.
Yeah.
So yes, Trevor Rocket. Yes, that's who we're talking about. The same guy. Yes, he was a tough, good, hard-nosed football player. Yes, it's a good one. And Ryan Harris was always undersized. He was tall, but Ryan started at Notre Dame like 260. Started as a true freshman, like barely 260 pounds. He was only,
I think he was only in the 290s when he was in the NFL too. Like he was never a guy that had much weight on him.
But really, really smart, really technically sound. But Ryan had some fight in him too, man. Like Ryan had some dog in him too. I like, and if you met him now, you'll see he still has some of that, like some of that attitude. But yeah, he's a good dude. Good football player too, man. Very good football player. Anyway, that's the
we had
that one. Yep. So here we go. Let's go to there.
Ida Benami, am I the only one who wants Notre Dame to be under the radar and not ranked and not overhyped? Let's say low key until we win this ship.
I understand that mentality, Iden and Ryan. If you feel that way too, I have no problem with it. That's just not my mentality. I want you to know I'm about to destroy you. I want you to know that I'm the baddest dude on the block, and I want you to know what's about to happen to you. I don't want to catch you off guard. I want you at your best. I want it to be your Super Bowl, and I want to come out and I want to pound you into the ground. That's how I want to be. That's just my mentality. That's how I want Notre Dame to be. Hey, you know what? I want every team to think we're their Super Bowl. If I'm a Notre Dame coach, if I'm a Notre Dame player, I'm not saying I'm Notre Dame. I'm not a part of Notre Dame. Y'all understand where I'm coming with this one. I want everybody to think we're the big. I want everybody circling us on their calendar because I want to know I'm getting your best. because that's going to make me kicking the crap out of you that much sweeter. That's how I look at it, Ryan. Like we can battle you. You're going to have to be prepared. You did everything possible to come beat us, and it didn't mean a thing. Didn't mean a thing. And and I've always kind of had a mentality, but like I've talked about the Mount Union game when I coached against Mount in the playoffs, and it's like we did everything we could to battle them, and they still beat us by 28. Like I always felt like that's why I always want to be on that other side. I want to be that team that we know you're going to give us your best, and it won't matter because we're going to still dominate you. And that's kind of what Notre Dame was like when I was growing up. I mean, that's why Lou Holtz's teams won so many big games, because they thrived in those moments. I mean, they were like, hey, bring us your best because you don't know what you're about to get into. And that's where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, I resonate with the opinion, I do. And I'm totally okay because Notre Dame hasn't climbed the mountain in a long time, right? So like if your objective this year is like, hey, you're gonna get disrespected, but like you're gonna show that you belong, I'm totally okay with that. I think though, then there's a evolution that needs to happen from that mindset after that, because in order to stay on the mountaintop, you have to be the baddest dude on the mountaintop, right? So I think that for me, I'm okay with either ideology you follow to get the first one. After that, though, I think that you have to align more with you are the dog, big dog now. You have the target on your back, and you have to, for sustainability purposes.
Yeah. Ryan, somebody that we forgot when we were talking about our undersized players that were dudes and dogs. We forgot a guy that's on the team now. And props to, where is it? Jason Smith. Because Howard Cross may be one. I'm like, not maybe one, Jason. You're correct. That's 6'1", 280, and an All-American. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Nose tackle, by the way. Yeah. Not 3 technique, nose tackle, and a dude. So, yeah, that's a good one, Jason.
I forgot Blake Groupie, too. Blake Groupie, one of the smallest men I've ever seen in my life.
But you know what's funny, though? I mean, you're kind of being funny, but like he kind of had that dog mentality, though. Like he wanted to kick it from 50-plus yards, man. Like, he wanted –
he just set the Saints. He just set the Saints record for most field goals by a first-year player. Yeah. I think he had like 30-something field goals this year. So yeah, good for him.
He got that thing rolling, man. Like he absolutely did something there. So he had that mentality, and you kind of, again, when you're that size, you kind of have to be. Yeah, kind of have to be. We did have a super chat pop up here. Let's go down there.
Tyler says, which game will be tougher in your opinion in this upcoming season? Is it Texas A&M, Louisville, Florida State, or USC, and why?
Tyler, thank you for the super chat. Ryan, so toughest to me, let's define some terms. Toughest to me is going to be, what is the game that's the toughest matchup for you? It can be the other team is just a bad matchup for you. It could be time of the season. It could be home versus away. And I think all those things factor into it. So for me, I'm ranking those 4 teams as follows. As far as toughest, I'm going A&M 1. And the reason I'm going A&M 1 is because there are new faces, new places. Doesn't mean Notre Dame shouldn't be ranked in the top 30, but it does mean it's going to be a battle. To a degree, you know what Colin Klein does on offense. You know what Jay Bateman does on defense, but you don't necessarily know what they're going to do specifically with this group of players. A&M has that kind of deal too. It is game 1. Game 1 can always be a time where there's some sloppiness. There's some things you don't quite know yet about your team that you have to be prepared for. So, I think that's going to be the toughest game because of that. My second toughest game as of right now that I look at is actually USC. Now, I think Florida State, I would rank Florida State higher than USC in the preseason top 25. But I think USC could be a tougher matchup because it's on the road. It's at the end of the year, and it's that time of the year where Notre Dame goes from east to west, Thanksgiving. It's right, and it can be a tough matchup. The rivalry aspect of it, Florida State 3, Louisville 4 would be how I'd rank those 4. Because again, now that's not my ranking, Ryan, of how I would rank them as top 4 teams. A&M's not the best team in that schedule. I just think the timing of when they play and the timing of where they're playing, and you're still kind of developing a little bit as a team. I think that might be the toughest matchup of all of them. But I think Notre Dame should win all of those games. But I'm going with the 2 road games first.
Well, without knowing not knowing exactly how teams are cohesively being built and all that type of stuff, I typically defer to what I perceive to be the most talented team first and foremost, and then we get into obviously the particulars of home versus away and placement on the schedule and all those types of things. I actually do think Texas A&M is the most talented of those teams. If I'm just looking at straight on paper, I think that they have a lot of talents. I mean, Scourton on defense. They have a couple other defensive linemen that were highly recruited players. They have Connor Wigman, who's going to be healthy for game one. I don't know if I'll be able to depend on him game 7 or 8 of the season, but for game one, he will obviously be there. Their offensive line didn't play great last year, but there's talent there for sure. There's absolutely talent. The
Losing
Moss
Bryce
kid at running back.
That I'll say
Apparently
that,
he
but they still
stunk
have
for
to keep
them
coming
last
back.
year. Apparently he was
Yeah.
bad. People were telling me he was really bad last year. They actually told him to leave. It was kind of
Really?
the thing. So yes, they were like, you can go
Okay.
type of thing. So
That's
he was one that was
interesting.
asked to leave. Yeah.
I think
So,
that's
but
that's very interesting. Keep going. Keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah. So I think that they are potentially the most talented team on paper as far as just raw talents overall. I think they will be better coached. And I do think that there's something to be said of playing in Kyle Field, which is not an easy place to play, and it being the first game of the season. Yes, they're going to have their maturation that needs to happen in game one, but Notre Dame also is going to have their own maturation that they're going to need to figure out. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new starting quarterback. They have new wide receivers. There's going to be some clunkiness, I believe, on both sides, or just some growing pains on both sides. So I would pick Texas A&M as the toughest team just because I think they're the most talented, and I think game one you're on a very even playing field because you guys are both bringing in some obviously new players and new positions.
What would be how would you round out the rest of it?
I would need to think about it a lot more. I mean, I'm not high on Florida State this year, so I'd probably say
Mhm.
Louisville, USC, and Florida State. Like, I'm just not high on Florida State right now, so we'll see.
I will say this, Ryan. Louisville would have been much higher on my list before the spring. Because I think losing Tyler Barron and Penny Boone and those guys, to me, though, that was part of the reason. Like him and Gillette on opposite Barron and Gillette on opposite ends was like, I'm not feeling great about that matchup as of today. But
Yeah.
losing Barron and Boone, especially the DN from Tennessee, that stunk.
Well, Louisville has that Rager kid that killed Notre Dame last year coming back at defensive end too. So we'll see.
Yeah. Their D-line kicked the crap out of Notre Dame last year.
They
Oh,
did.
goodness.
Larry Randall says, if Ryan is Squirt, I'm assuming he meant to say squirrel, then I want to hear what your nickname would be for all the hosts. Is this asking me or is Brian giving nicknames?
Like all of us. So Larry, thank you for the super chat, man. I do appreciate that very much. Well, my nickname growing up was BD. So just my initials. That's what people called me playing sports and things along those lines. Vince said he was known as Vinny, is what people called him in high school. They just called him Vinny, which is like not really a nickname, but just
my cousin Vinny. I'm
yeah,
gonna call him Joe
yeah,
Pesci.
it's like
I'm gonna call
which
him
a
Joe
lot
Pesci.
of people name. I call him Vincenzo, but like that's more of my nickname for him, just to be funny. But yeah, he said it's Vinny. I don't know what Sean Davis's nickname was, and I don't know Sean Steyer's nickname, so I don't know either one of those.
Sean would be the professor. I'm going to call Sean Steyers the professor. Okay. Vince, since we're talking about the my cousin Vinny thing, he's going to be Pesci. Pesci's his nickname. Okay. Sean Davis, he's a USC guy now, man. You know, he's got his daughter out there, so we're going to call him Trojan.
Sean is always a Notre Dame guy. He just allowed his daughter to make her own choices, wrong as they may be.
He's Trojan. He's Trojan now, or he's a Cali guy, man. We'll call him Cali if he wants to be Cali instead. Big Cali guy. That's Sean Davis. Ball Peen Shalele says, who are 3 teams you think are being counted out and could unexpectedly end in the top 12 team playoff this year?
Well, I don't know that I don't think that there's anyone that I would say I believe is being counted out that could be in the playoff. Well, I'll say one, and this is one this is more for Ryan. I won't be shocked if Florida State wins the ACC again this year. Like, yes, they have a lot of moving parts, and I don't think that they're the favorite like they were last year. But I think Florida. I'll tell you this: I have the 2 teams at the top of the ACC for me are the teams that I think people are kind of dismissing and shouldn't. Clemson and Florida State for being a playoff team. Like Miami's now the new hot team and all that. But I think those 2 teams have a shot to be a playoff team. If I had to pick today which one I would take out of the ACC, I would go. I'm with you. I would go with Clemson, Ryan. But I think Florida State has a chance to be a lot better than people think. And I'll tell you, of the 2 teams, only one of those teams has a quarterback who's won an ACC championship, and that's Florida State.
Sure.
So,
sure.
My thing with DJ is he gets criticized more than I think he should by some, not you, Ryan, because we talk football.
Mhm.
But he gets criticized by some because he's not what they thought he was going to be.
Sure.
5-star kid. But if you take that out, he's a solid college quarterback that can, run and do some nice things. The question I have is, how well will the pieces around him come together? Because they have a lot to have to replace. But I do like some of the guys that they've brought in to be those replacements. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
But
we'll know how well Coach Norvell has built his team this year, because I mean, that's a lot of defections from a lot of kids that were also transfer portal pickups. So if he has been steadily building the high school recruiting ranks and hit with a couple other transfers that he has the last couple of years, then maybe it's sustainable. I just don't think it's going to be sustainable. But I could. But
you just pointed to the issue, Ryan. It's really dangerous trying to have to completely rebuild your team every 2 years. It's very dangerous because you don't know. Did I hit on Marvin Jones as well as I hit on Jared Verse? Did I hit on Jalen Hale the way that I hit on Johnny Wilson? Did I hit on this running back as well as I hit on Trey? You don't know the answer to that. It's not the same repeatable type of thing because you're not the one developing them anymore. You're trusting, hoping that somebody else laid a good enough foundation. Did you hit on your D tackle portal guy like you hit on Braden Fisk? That was a home run. Yeah. So are they just that good of evaluators and they're going to hit home runs again? I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't think they're going to hit the home runs that they did with Verse and Fisk and some of those guys, but I think they've done enough with high school recruiting and some of the guys they've picked up, and I think they're still going to be a good football team. Miami's the team too. And here's the difference for me. Miami's picking up some really good players in the portal. I just don't trust that they have a staff that can bring them together and make them one team. That's my thing with Miami. Yeah. But if we're talking on paper, Miami's a contender for the ACC. I just don't think they're going to be.
I think Miami's going to go like 9-3, but it's going to be like the most just who cares 9-3 of all time, because it's like you spent so much in the portal and the best you could do is 9-3. So
yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
I mean, Damian Martinez is a great player. I mean, they're good,
and he's gonna be running behind a big offensive line.
Yeah,
a very big offensive line. I don't think Oklahoma State's getting enough playoff love, to be honest with you, Ryan. Like they were a 10-4 team last year. And again, we're talking playoff. I could see them winning the Big 12. I mean, that gets them in. That gets them into the playoff. And so there's this. Well, Utah's going to win it, and can't. Well, okay, guys, but let's not forget who the best team coming back that was in the Big 12 last year was. It was Oklahoma State, not Kansas State or Utah or whatever else. It was Oklahoma State. And they got a lot coming back, and Alan Bowman's going to be a 13th year senior this year at Oklahoma State. They've got an excellent running back.
Bad. He's such a bad player. Alan Bowman's so bad. Like, actually a terrible player. He's awful.
Good.
But he has one good game. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say he has like one good game, and then he has 3 bad ones, and he has another random good game. Like, he's a bad quarterback. Bad quarterback.
I like Brennan Presley. Is also another good player that's coming back for them that had over 100. So I like that football team. I don't think they're getting. I think they're kind of dismissed. Like, it's going to be Utah, it's going to be Kansas State or somebody like that, Kansas and all. I think those are teams that are kind of get dismissed a little bit. Looking at some of the other leagues, Ryan's, Big Ten. I mean, you could maybe make a case for Penn State getting a little dismissed, but some people still have them top 10. I don't think they're being overlooked. Tennessee,
they also are coached by James Franklin. So what are we doing about that one?
Here's one. Great point. Here's one, Ryan. Because that's the thing, right, Ryan? You just said, you love the OC hire. I love both hires, but it's still the same head coach. You know what I mean?
It's just they're going to go 10-2, guys, and they're going to lose to the 2 best teams in the Big Ten. It's what they do every single year.
Here's a team, Ryan, that I think is getting counted out. I've seen people predict them to go 8-4. And not sniffing the playoff. Alabama. I see a lot of people talking about Bama's not going to be a playoff team, and I saw one SEC guy talking about they did SEC prediction at Bama at 8-4. I'm like, guys, they lost Saban, the greatest coach of my generation. I don't think that's debatable, right? Yeah. But they replaced him with a guy who had a team in the college football playoff and national championship game last year. Right, who took a team over that went 4-8, and they went 25-3 in his 2 years there, And yes, Bama lost some dudes, but they got a lot of dudes still coming back. And I just think there's this notion that, all of a sudden Bama doesn't have talent, or that Bama won only because of Nick Saban's superiority. And here's the other thing too, Ryan, even if Kalen DeBoer isn't that guy, he's still taking over the foundation that Nick Saban laid. I mean, Larry Coker was a terrible coach, but he played in back-to-back national titles because he inherited a great roster, right? Like Bama's not going to just go away because Nick Saban's not there. If they do, Ryan, it'll be in 2-3 years. It's not going to be an immediate fall off the cliff 8-4. Like I don't know that I'd predict Bama to be a playoff team. I got to go through it all and break it all down. But when I see people legitimately dismissing them as a potential playoff team, I'm like, you guys are out of your minds. That's still going to be a very dangerous football team this year. Very dangerous football team, in my opinion. That's the other one that I would say.
I have one, but I don't want to say it on this channel because everyone's going to hate me. So I just want to skip past
Michigan.
I think Michigan's getting slept on big time. I've been watching some of their players that are returning, and I think they have some dudes coming back, man.
I think they could be a playoff team again?
I think they could be for the Big Ten this year. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily pick them
even
to win,
with the new teams.
I keep hearing like 9-3, 8-4. I'm just like, guys, I think they had some dudes coming back, man. Like Will Johnson's really good. Mason Graham is really good. Kenneth Grant is quite good. I mean, the safeties are pretty dang good that are coming back.
I like
they
the tight end
running back coming back. Oh, the tight end.
I like their tight end a lot. Yeah.
They have
two
a lot
reasons why I just.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I just like, I understand that the depth isn't going to be as good as it was last year from an entirety perspective, but like, I feel like we're acting like it's just a bare bones roster. And I'm just like, I don't see a bare bones roster. I see a pretty good roster.
That's not my beef, Ryan. I have 3 reasons why I don't think Michigan. I think Michigan's going to be an 8-4 type of team, and I think they're going to struggle a little bit. Number one is if they were bringing the same roster back with Jim Harbaugh and most of the staff they had last year, I'd have a different conversation because he's a known commodity. They are not only having to replace 13 draft picks. And now let's put that in context. They had 4 guys drafted in the 7th round. A couple of them probably don't get drafted if they don't win a championship. That's how it always works. Like John Fitzpatrick doesn't get drafted if Georgia's not coming off a national title team. He's like the 3rd string tight end. That's just kind of how it goes. And it's been like that for several years. But they still lost a lot of players. I have no clue who their quarterback is going to be. No clue.
Orgy, baby.
Don't necessarily have a lot of faith in whoever they replace them with. And then the third part is those 2 things are shaky enough, but then you've got to – this is a team that's got to play Fresno, Texas, USC, at Washington, at Illinois, Oregon, and at Ohio State. Yep. That's going to be a challenge. And
until
I just don't
Ohio
know
State
that I
beats
can –
them. Until Ohio State beats them. I'm just not –
Well, I mean, if like I said, if Jim Harbaugh was still here, then I could understand that. But that's my thing. I just can't – don't have a clue about the coach. Not sure how I'm going to feel about the quarterback. I mean, we saw that happen with Notre Dame. Unproven coach, unproven quarterback situation, decent roster, and they struggle out of the gate. And that was against the schedule that's not as hard as the one that Michigan's going to play early in the season, in my view.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see. I've had people say that they don't think they're going to have a winning record. I think that's nuts.
Oh, that's crazy.
I think they're going to be more of like an 8-4 type of. So I am one of those people that is dismissing them. So that would be good. And you're always allowed to give those opinions. People may not agree with you, but that's part of what makes it fun.
I'm just not fully in on Ohio State either this year. Like talent wise, for sure. But when we're talking about the Michigan Ohio State thing, what player that's going to be starting for Ohio State this year has beaten Michigan? Is there one? I don't know the answer to that.
There's got to be like someone who's going to be like a 5th-year senior or something. I mean, there's those kind of guys because it's been 3 years in a row. Plus, they didn't play in 2020, so it'd have to be like a guy that's going to be a 5th or 6th-year senior. I don't know who those guys would be. So to your answer, I don't know that they have anyone that's beaten Michigan in their careers. Is there any transfers that have come over? Did they get anybody from Georgia? No. Did they get anybody from Washington? I don't think so. Right. They got Caleb Downs from Bama. He's 0-1 against out in Michigan.
See, this is what I don't like. There weren't any players in Michigan that had beaten Ohio State prior to 2021, but they beat them 3 straight years, Chief. What does that mean? What does that have? That has no relevance to what I just said.
They had to
Zero.
knock down the door. That's the reality.
You know who has
Ryan, this isn't the 2020, 2019, 2018 Michigan team anymore, though, right?
Exactly.
That's the whole point.
Well,
Alabama used to smack Michigan around too. Remember that? They smacked Michigan around not that long ago. Was it 2018 season? Right? 2019 season?
Will Johnson's never lost to Ohio State. Mason Graham's never lost to Ohio State. Colson Loveland's never lost to Ohio State. These guys haven't lost to Ohio State. That's the point.
Right. And again, Ohio State beat them 9 straight years. Okay, cool. Let's accept that premise, Ryan. Name me one player on the team. This is Ryan's point. Name me one player on the team. Name me one coach on the team that was part of that 9-game winning streak. Ryan Day? Larry Johnson? Well, Ryan Day has beat Ohio State once or Michigan once as a head. Isn't he like 1-3 against Michigan right now?
I think so. Yeah.
1-3 against Michigan right now. So again, here's my point that I want to get across to Chief Brody, because I think he's going down a bad line of reasoning in this particular instance. You can't use past data points when you're talking about people that weren't part of the past data points. And now I'm not talking about players. I'm talking about players and coaches. If Urban Meyer was still at Ohio State, number one, they wouldn't have lost 3 straight times. But number two, you'd say, hey, there's a coach that he was part of that. He knows what it takes to get back on top and beat Michigan now that Harbaugh's not there, right? We could have that argument, and I think that'd be more compelling. But has Ryan Day proven that he knows how to beat Michigan? No. He has not proven that he knows how to beat Michigan.
He's got a 250 winning percentage against.
Right.
I don't understand how that's not a sound argument, though, is what I'm saying to Chief Brody. I mean, that's all I'm saying. I'm like, literally, the guys that are going to be suiting up for Michigan this year have only beaten Ohio State, and there's nobody on Ohio State that has beaten Michigan. There is a mental block, I think, for Ohio State right now. That would be my arguments. I
think Ohio State's going to beat them this year. I don't have a lot of doubt in that. But I don't think we can sit there and talk about, well, why do I think that? I just look at the 2 rosters. And I think the rosters at Michigan that beat Ohio State were much more comparable to what Ohio State is than what I think this team will be. That's a different argument to say. But you can't, like, it's like, you know what it's like, Ryan? We're Notre Dame fans. It's like the 2012 Notre Dame Stanford game. Right. You look at some of the previous games, like when Notre Dame and Stanford played in 2010, I don't think Stanford was 37-10 better than Notre Dame from a roster standpoint. But the Notre Dame players didn't believe they could beat Stanford. That was also true in 2011. It took until you had, but what was unique about that Notre Dame 2012 team? That was a veteran team with some very generational players that you could go kind of build around, and they still needed overtime to beat them. So as Notre Dame fans, we can appreciate that. You can appreciate the fact that this is the way that it is, but here's the difference in this particular one. You don't have the same head coach that built that winning record over them. That's where I'm coming from, Ryan. But I'm not going to dismiss the notion of, but do Ohio State players believe that they can beat Michigan? And like I've heard, this is a counter the Michigan people say, well, look, Sharon Moore was the head coach for the Ohio State game last year. And I understand that, but Jim Harbaugh was still the head coach Monday to Friday, and he was still the head coach that developed that team. But you also can't sit there and be like, Sharon Moore had to run the in-game decisions against Penn State last year and Ohio State, and who made the better in-game decisions, Ryan Day or Sharon Moore? Sharon Moore. Clearly, it was Sharon Moore. So, but I still think Ohio State wins, but I'm not going to sit here and kind of poo-poo the notion that Michigan has no chance. I did that last year when it was at Ohio State. I made that mistake of Michigan got lucky last year. They caught a break and blah, but Ohio State's going to get back at them this year. There's no way Ohio State's going to allow Michigan to beat them and then disrespect them for an entire year, insult them, mock them. Ohio State's going to be ready for that game. What happened? Same exact thing the next year. They were the less physical football team. They could not play well in the money moments of that game. The same thing was true this year.
I just think we always go back to, from the Ohio State side, of Ohio State's the much more talented football team, and I would agree they are. But they were also the more talented team last 4 years. Like, yes, it is. They have been the more talented team. There's no doubt. But I think that there is something to be said about that momentum and that mental block that could be instilled of a team that has not felt that success. Could it change this year? Yes. I'm not predicting Michigan in a blowout. Until I see Ohio State beat Michigan with this current roster, with Ryan Day consistently, and I know they beat him in 2019. Sure. Yeah, 2019 was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was a lot more better looking than I am now. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm sorry. Doesn't matter anymore.
I think Ohio State wins. I think Ohio State's going to be very good this year. My prove it moment, Ryan, for me is I still have to see Ryan Day put it together to where he can build a team that can win a championship, and that I don't know that he can do.
Yep.
And it's kind of like how I felt about Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. The further and further away he got from Bob Stoops' football teams, the less they were championship caliber or playoff caliber.
Well,
and we see that at Ohio State right now.
I'll go as far as this. I know his record overall is good, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Ryan Day is a bad coach because I don't think he's a bad coach, but I do think he's a fraud. 100% think he's a fraud. I think he is a fraudulent. As far as
explain.
Every coaching list that you're going to see this offseason is going to have Ryan Day as a top 5 coach. And I do not think he's a top 5 coach. Absolutely not. Very overrated. Is he bad? No, he's not bad.
So when you say fraud, you're essentially meaning overrated, essentially. He's
way
not
overrated.
What people make him out. Okay,
way overrated. Yes.
I got you.
And they loaded up this offseason. They brought in a lot of great football players, a lot. And if he doesn't get it done this year, win the Big Ten and contend for a championship, I think that furthers the fraudulence of Ryan Day. Yes.
Ryan, let me ask you this, and then we'll move on from Ohio State. What do you think, looking at it from an analyst standpoint, not from what fans think, and I'd also, Archer, the Ohio State fan in the chat, I'd be curious your thoughts on that or any other Ohio State thoughts on this. Man, the spin machine is in full effect right now.
What is it the college football playoff one that Archer put in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Made the playoff
I know, dude. I know.
Shouldn't he have more wins? Because he doesn't. Like, if he's been in it more times, then shouldn't he have more wins than Urban? And he doesn't have more wins than Urban.
That spin just tries to make it sound like he's better than Urban Meyer, and that's just like, come on,
it's
man.
ridiculous.
Come on.
And he's winning with the foundation that Urban Meyer laid, by the way. And let's not also forget the first 2 or 3 years of Urban Meyer's tenure, they didn't even have a playoff.
We always talk about put a new coach being in a good situation. Ryan Day walked into gold mine, dude. Like,
Harbaugh nailed it. He was, born on third base and thought he hit a triple, and he's absolutely proven it. He's absolutely proven it. Archer, man, you do not do yourself favors when you spin like that. It's this was my whole thing under the Brian Kelly. This is my whole. Oh, let me say this. This is my whole beef during the Brian Kelly era with Notre Dame fans. We don't need to like defend the guy. Like, don't lose your credibility defending something that's indefensible, right? Like, here's the reality. You have lost playoff games to teams that are not better than you. You have lost to teams that kept you from getting into the playoff that aren't better than you. You've gotten beaten by Michigan 3 years in a row, and not once did they have a better roster than you. At some point, I don't care if you lost to Georgia by 1 and Urban lost by 31. Urban's got a title without you.
And we're going to scream about the cheating stuff. Cheating. Well, Michigan didn't cheat this year against you with their head coach not even in the football game and still beat you.
Right.
Like, let's just it's very simple.
Sometimes you have to be able to say, look, this is a flaw in our team. This is a flaw in our program. This guy's not getting it done. I don't know why anyone would want to justify trying to explain away Ryan Day as somehow being better than Urban Meyer. Right? Like, he's been in more play. So what? He was in a league. Here's the other thing. The league was not as good during a part of his tenure as it was. Because when Urban was coming in, not only was Michigan good when Urban came in, but Wisconsin was a lot better. Michigan State was a lot better. There was a lot of really good football teams in the Big Ten back then. So, look, and Ryan said, look, it's not saying Brian Day is a bad coach.
No.
But there are a lot of coaches that could have been hired at Ohio State and done what Ryan Day has done. A lot.
Right.
A lot.
100%. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Yep.
So here was going to be my question, Ryan, before I got distracted by that. What do you, looking at from a pure analyst standpoint, okay, we're getting total Brian Kelly was closer against. Okay, so here we go. So Notre Dame, Brian Kelly is a better coach than Ryan Day, and Notre Dame in 2020 was a better team than Ohio State, Archer, because Notre Dame lost to Bama by fewer points than Ohio State lost to Bama. Is that a premise you'll accept? Right? Notre Dame in 2018 was better than Alabama because they lost to Clemson by fewer points then Alabama lost to Clemson. Is that what we're doing?
I think we can make it as easy as possible, Archer. Honestly, man. You know I respect you, brother. You're in this chat all the time. Nothing but love, right? Give me an adjective as far as coaching prowess to describe Urban Meyer, and then give me one to describe Ryan Day. Just give me the adjective. Great, good, elite, historic, poor, whatever adjective you want. And I hope, I pray here live on this podcast that those adjectives are not close to each other. I really pray that happen because Urban Meyer is a great coach, a Hall of Fame coach, and Ryan Day he's okay. He's okay.
Is still
Maybe
riding
good.
the Hall of Fame coach's coattails.
Right.
Because
just give me the adjectives.
Ryan,
all I want is the adjectives. I don't want the Iowa scores or anything. Give me the adjectives.
I'll give you this. You can talk to me about Purdue. You can talk to me about Iowa. I'll give you two things. National championships. Ryan Day's number's what, Ryan?
0.
What's his number? 0. Urban Meyer's at Ohio State. 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you two numbers, Ryan, and I want you to tell me what they mean. I'm going to show you how smart Ryan is. 7-0, 1-3. Mr. Roberts, what do those stand for?
Record against Michigan. Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
What would you rather be?
Human being? Oh man.
What would you rather have? What would I know some people that have been part of the Ohio State program that would strongly disagree with that comment.
Maybe he doesn't sleep with as many co-eds, but I don't know if I would necessarily say full scope. He's a better person. I don't know, man.
Yeah. They're very true. Would you rather have a title and 7-0 against Michigan, but losses to Iowa and Purdue, or wins over Iowa and Purdue, 1-3 against Michigan, 0 national title appearances? And let's not forget the last time that Ohio State was on the national championship stage. Let's not forget they had a 28-point loss. Let's not act like Ryan Day's teams. Let's not pretend that the only playoff appearances under Ryan Day are 2019 Clemson and 2021 Georgia or 2022 Georgia, right? Let's not ignore the 28-point beatdown that Bama handed them in 2020. Let's not ignore that either with Urban Meyer's roster. Let's not forget that one. So, yeah, we're going to go.
Sleeping with co-eds doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, but when you're married, it does, Nathan. When you're married, it 100% does.
If you are a college graduate or a college student, yes. When you are a married grown-up in your 30s and 40s, it makes you a bad person.
Married is the key word there that makes it very, very bad. Yes.
It makes you a very bad person. What's the standard that Ohio State has to accomplish this year for you to say Ryan Day's turning the corner? Short, I mean, obviously title, but short of a title, what's the minimum you need to see from that program?
Win the Big Ten. Yeah. Okay. Win the Big Ten, and obviously you make a playoff berth with the Big Ten. I think it's a mental block over Michigan against Michigan right now, man. In order to turn the corner, first and foremost, you got to show that you're the big man on the block in the Big Ten again and beat the team that you despise with every facet of your being, right? So Big Ten championship would be a very positive step. National championship should be in the conversation too.
Do you think they have to win a playoff game to kind of really say with everything
they've
done?
Or are you
just saying,
okay. No, win the Big Ten. Win the Big Ten, and then I will say he took a step. Yeah.
Oh, so because my question wasn't reach their peak; it was turn the corner.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're saying is beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Does winning the Big Ten have to include beating Michigan? That's the other question I have, right? Because they could go 11-1 and still get beat by Michigan. Okay.
I think it should. I think those things have to be related. I think because if you beat Michigan but you lose the Big Ten to Oregon, let's say, just like theoretically, I think it's still an imperfect season, an imperfect performance. Like you are, in my opinion, I know Oregon's got a really good roster.
Oregon, Ryan, what if they beat Oregon in the regular season and then lose in that Big Ten title game, but beat Michigan?
I need them to win the Big Ten, I think, too. I think I still need that because
you'd rather have them lose in the regular season at Oregon and then beat Oregon in the Big Ten, or beat
Michigan, win a Big Ten championship. Then I start saying, oh, okay, maybe Ryan Day figured it out a little bit. Maybe he understands how.
Win the Big Ten and beat Michigan. Those two things have to be.
Yeah,
you go 12-1 and lose to Michigan, and I'm going to sit there and still say, nope. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep. Because I look at it like I think that like because Oregon I think has a really good roster coming back as well, but I still think Ohio State has the better one, right? Like at the end of the day. So I think the biggest thing with Ryan Day is I think he's underachieved with the talent that he's had. So I need him to achieve what he should achieve, in my opinion. I think that he should beat Michigan and win the Big Ten.
Agree. I don't think Ohio State needs to run the table. I'm not gonna if Ohio State goes out to Eugene and it's a 4-quarter battle and Oregon wins it at the end, I'm not going to disrespect Ohio State if they then go out and run the table, beat Michigan, and then win a rematch in a neutral field that's now in your backyard. Right?
Yep.
That's how I see it. We're on the same. I think for them to justify, I actually think though I would turning the corner, but to me for this season to be considered a success, I do think they need to win a playoff game. And I say that about Notre Dame as well, Ryan. I mean, I don't think just getting to a 12-team playoff tells us Marcus Freeman's arrived. I think you got to get there and win a game. That's what gets me thinking, we got something.
Well, I don't think it would be a success from like the Ohio State perspective, but I think that winning the Big Ten and beating Michigan is a success for Ryan Day's ascension as a coach.
And,
if that makes sense.
I asked you that you answered a question, Ryan, specifically. You answered the question I asked you, which I appreciate. It was, what's to make them think they've turned the corner? I didn't ask you what's a success for 2024. You answered it perfectly. What's turning the corner? And I think you nailed it. Winning the Big Ten and beating Michigan is turning the corner. Doesn't mean they've arrived yet. Arrived, I think we both agree, would mean you got to win. You got to do all that and win 2 playoff games. With the roster they have, they need to win at least one. They need to at least get to the semis, because this could be a darn good Ohio State team and lose in the semis. Let's be honest. Let's not set a false narrative to we can bang on Ohio State. They could get to the semis, lose to a Texas, lose to a Notre Dame, lose to a Bama, lose to a Georgia, and we still look and say, yeah, but that was a darn good Ohio State team. It's like the 19 Ohio State team, Ryan Day's first year. Yeah, they lost to Clemson, Ryan, but you look back, you're like, that was a darn good Ohio State team. They just happened to play they just happened to play a Clemson team that was also really talented and just had in my opinion, a generational quarterback that put that team on his shoulders.
He went Superman in that game too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you needed that, and you still had a chance to win. That was it fell short of a title, but that was a darn good season and a darn good football team. I don't need them to go all the way for this season to be a success for Ohio State. They got to win a playoff game. And if they do lose in the semis, it needs to be like they lost to Georgia 2 years ago. It needs to be some kind of good game where you'd played great. That team just on this particular day was better than you.
Well, my last thought on Ohio State is also that I think that there might potentially be progress with Ryan Day this offseason, because he went out and he gave play calling duties over to a really good offensive minds, right? And last offseason, what were we talking about this time of year? Like, he might give the job to the wide receiver coach. He might let him call plays, and then he ended up not doing that because I don't think he was comfortable enough with himself to be like, you know what? I need help, and I need a different perspective. I need a different mind. And with Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles as your offense coordinator, defense coordinator, that's arguably the best coordinator duo in all of college football, right? So I think that you showed that there might be potential growth, but now he's got to get out of his own way and he's got to show that he can take that next step. I think that he's got the chance to. It's just I need to see it to believe it a little bit.
I will give him credit, Ryan. He did not sit on his hands the last 2 off seasons. Hiring Jim Knowles was a good step. Hiring Chip Kelly was a huge step, because I think hiring Chip Kelly impacts 2 positions. I think it also impacts 2 coaches. I think this is going to something that's going to rejuvenate Justin Fry a little bit. I think Justin Fry coaches a certain way that didn't fit what Ryan Day wanted the offense to be. I think Justin Fry very much fits I think Harry Hiestand would have been a horrible fit with Ryan Day. Horrible fit. Because that's not how I want to play the game. Justin Fry is more in that school of physical, right? Look what he did at UCLA. It's been a bad fit. Now that he's running an offense that's being run by Chip Kelly, I think this is going to make Justin Fry a better coach too. We like to bang on Ohio State. If I'm being honest, he went out and got portal players. We'll see if they work or not. But he didn't sit on his hands. He's not making excuses. He's not like, we don't have a quarterback, and they have a great running back who's injury prone, so they went and got another one. I don't love all their moves. If Seth McLaughlin is coming to play for you and you're going to put him at center, that's a mistake. If you're going to bring him in and put him at guard, that's a good pickup. It's a good pickup for them if you put him at guard.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you and I have talked about, Ryan, the snapping issues did not just show up against Michigan.
Yeah.
They had kind of been an issue all year with him.
Yeah.
So
I'm also surprised they moved their center. I forget the kid's name, but I thought he was pretty talented. So
Carson Hensman, yeah.
Hensman, yeah. I'm surprised they moved him. Or
Yeah,
they're going to.
I am too.
I mean, I feel like they have, right? I mean, it's kind of been
I think they're moving him to guard, I believe. Yeah.
Which is okay, but like I thought he showed a lot of promise at times at center. So I
Agree.
was kind of confused that he moved him.
Let's get to this one, Ryan. There's a couple questions about the Notre Dame 2024 season that I think fit really well with what we're discussing here.
Okay.
And let me get to a couple of those that will fit in very well with this. Here we go. Here's from, let's start with this one from All the Smoke. And then we'll get to one from PQ What to Do about Notre Dame in 2024.
All the Smoke says, do you anticipate with the 2024 season to show what Mike Brown, Mike Denbrock can do, that the 2026 wide receiver recruiting will close on some bigger names more consistently?
I do. I don't know that it's going to be this world beater 4,000 plus yard season, Ryan. I don't think it's going to be that, but if they go out there and throw for 3,700 plus and 30 plus touchdowns and have some moments of success, I think that this team will start to show that kind of stuff. Because I don't think that we've seen with other positions. Like, I don't think that Notre Dame needs to show that we can throw for 4,500 yards like Washington did to attract guys. I think they just need to close the gap. I don't think Notre Dame needed to have a cornerback go in the first round to attract them. They just needed to show that they could put some really good players on the field, and that's going to then attract better players. So, I do believe that we will see a good offense from Notre Dame this year. How good, we'll see, but I think it's going to be a top 10 offense this year. I anticipate it being a more balanced football team this year where they can hurt teams in both ways. And I think they're going to be a more effective passing team. And I don't know that it's always going to necessarily be reflected in the same numbers. I could see Notre Dame having a similar yards per attempt average to last year, a similar, quarterback rating as last year, but the yards per game goes up. But more importantly, there's not this big dichotomy of 13 yards per attempt, 12 yards per attempt against bad teams, and then like 6 and 5 and 4 against good teams. That's where I'm at. I'd rather see fewer of the 13s and 14s and fewer of the 4s, 5s, and 6s, and just kind of live in this zone over here. I think would be something that would make me very happy, very happy. So that's from All the Smoke. And then this is the question from PQ What It Do. What should the expectation be for the 2024 team? And does your personal expectation meet, exceed, or not meet those expectations? Well, I think they're kind of twofold, because my personal expectation is what I think the expectation should be for Notre Dame in general, especially going into year 3. My expectation is not that Notre Dame has to win a title or has to get to the title game for this season to be a success. Here's what I think this season, what my expectations should be for the season. Notre Dame should be a playoff team. I think that means you're 11-1, 10-2 at the worst, but I think 11-1 should be the expectation. You've got 4 teams on your schedule that are on your level, and they were named earlier: A&M, Louisville, Florida State, USC to some degree. And then you've got a couple teams, in my opinion, that can be dangerous if you're not, playing your game. And one of them is Georgia Tech. So you have like 5 or 6 teams on your schedule that, if you're not playing your A game to some degree, can hurt you. I mean, with all due respect, you should go 5-1 against them, because 2 of those teams you should just out-talent. I mean, you should out-talent Louisville. Louisville can beat Notre Dame, as they showed, but they shouldn't. I mean, that's a game where Notre Dame should not. Notre Dame shouldn't have to bring their A game to beat Louisville. They just can't bring their D game on offenses, which is what happened last year. And so, that's one for me. 11-1 in a playoff berth is where it starts for me as far as what expectation is. But knowing that Notre Dame is then at that point in time going to be hosting a playoff game, I do believe that expectations for Notre Dame should be a minimum this season: 11-1 playoff berth, first round victory. That's the minimum expectation. Beyond that, it's like, okay, now we're learning just how far you're taking the team. Is Notre Dame capable of making a deeper run? Sure. and we've seen this, Ryan, like we've seen this with teams where when they kick down the door, they kick it down hard. Michigan went from not having ever won a playoff game to just kicking the door down and beating Bama and Washington, right? I mean, that happens sometimes. We've seen that. We saw Clemson go from Clemsoning their entire tenure to being a dominant team for 3 or 4 years. It happens sometimes. But I don't know that I should expect that to happen, because while I am very high on Notre Dame's talent, I don't know that their talent is such we should expect them to go out there and just beat Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Bama, all these for 4 games. So expectation 11-1, first round playoff win, and if you get beat in the quarters, it better be a good game. That's the other thing. Yeah. It better be a good game. It better be a team. Like, here's what I don't want to have happen. I don't want them to go to the quarters, play Oklahoma State and lose, or Utah and lose. If you get to the quarters and you get that real favorable matchup, now I'm expecting you get to the semis. But without the context of the opponent, assuming they're playing a really good team in the quarters, it's first round win, competitive 4-quarter, ball bounces a different way. Maybe you win in the quarters. That's the minimum expectation for me. What say you, Mr. Roberts?
I mean, I'm the same. I mean, first and foremost, make the playoff. That should be the expectation every single year in a 12-team playoff. Like, you need to make the playoff, 1. 2, you need to show that you are competitive against any playoff team, right? Like, I'm tired of going to these big games and losing 30-3. I'm just tired of it. Absolutely tired of it. In order to take that next step, you need to show that you can compete against any team. Not even necessarily saying win. I'm saying compete, because compete, if you're in the conversation, then some games are going to go your way. When you're losing 30-3, no game's going to go your way, sir. You're 27 points worse than the team that you're playing at minimum, right? So you have to show you're competitive. And if you win a game or 2 in the playoff, I consider that a success, because I think that is a step in the right direction. But on a baseline level, make the playoff, be competitive in the playoff. That is what needs to be the expectation for Notre Dame every single season.
And no, Andrew Gilmore, there are no caveats. There are no caveats. No, Georgia could be extremely good. They still shouldn't blow Notre Dame out. They still shouldn't blow Notre Dame out. There are no caveats. Blow them out talent-wise. No, this isn't back in the day where you're just happy to be there. You're in year 3. You have a talented roster. You have a veteran quarterback. You have a very talented offensive line. You have dynamic. Because, like, here's the thing: when you played Bama in 2020, it's like, should it have been more competitive? Yes, but Notre Dame, and we said this before the game, Ryan. You need everything to go right for you and some things to go wrong for Bama, and that's how Notre Dame would have had a shot to win that game. Everything went right. And what do I mean by that? That one ball that Kyle Hamilton almost picks, it's thrown 5 inches inside, and he picks it off. A couple fumbles go hit the ground, a couple of those sacks you close off, you force a couple turnovers, bounces off a guy's chest, goes up in the air, you pick it off. Those things could have broke Notre Dame's way. Maybe they'd have had a shot to win if everything went perfect. That's not where Notre Dame is anymore. And I'm not accepting that anymore. Like, no, yes, Georgia has a very talented team. So does Notre Dame. I mean, I've seen 4 different Notre Dame play. And Ryan, you know my stance on mock drafts. I'm not taking this as gospel. But 4 mock drafts from people I somewhat respect have had 4. I've seen mock drafts from outlets I respect, because I don't look at like Walter Football and the ones that are a joke. I look at ones of people that I kind of somewhat respect. I've seen 4 different Notre Dame players go in the first round. Right? I mean, and then that doesn't even get into some of the guys that aren't draft eligible. This isn't like 2020 Bama when you're having to go try and beat Bama with Clarence Lewis and Nick McLeod at corner and Ben Skoranek and Javon McKinley and at receiver. Right. And Kyron Williams and not really anything else at running back. You know what I mean? Like, you've got dudes across the board now. You've got an offensive line that can line up against Georgia, and you're not going to overwhelm them with size. Notre Dame should have multiple 330-pounders in their starting offensive line this year, right? I mean, you've got a defensive line that's got NFL players in the 2 deep. So, no, this should not be a team that gets blown out by anybody, in my opinion. Okay. So, no, there are no caveats. And do I think Georgia's going to be very good? Yeah. Do I think this is going to be some generational Georgia team that nobody can touch? No, I don't. There's going to be a lot of really good teams this year, in my opinion. Do I think Georgia has an argument to be ranked number 1? Yes, I do. This isn't about Georgia. They're excellent. I just don't think that Notre Dame fans should be lowering the bar again and saying, well, we're pretty good, but we don't have SEC speed. Yeah,
I'm not in favor. I'm not in favor of participation awards, and that's what that feels like to me. And I'm not there for it.
Because I'm going to ask you this, Ryan. I'm going to ask you this. I want your honest opinion. When Notre Dame and Georgia play each other, who has the best cornerback on the field that day?
Oh, best corner. Yeah, Benjamin Morrison. Yep.
Who has the most explosive running back on the field that day?
I don't even know who's coming back for Georgia. Who do they even have coming back? They lost a couple kids.
And they went.
So I guess Notre Dame by a thought. Oh, Trevor Etienne's pretty good. Trevor Etienne's pretty good. But yeah.
But is he more explosive than Jeremiah Love? I don't think he is.
Yeah.
I think we could debate if he's if he's more explosive than Jeremiah Love. Point being this isn't a thing where Notre Dame's just outmanned and outsized and out physical and out athleted. Notre Dame's going to have their 4-3 guys at receiver as well this year. One of them might not play much. Think about that. Jaden Harrison's a 4-3 guy. He's going to have a hard time getting on the field this year, right?
Yeah. Well, special teams though. Special teams, baby.
I'm talking about offense.
I know. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So, this is the thing. Guys that started for Notre Dame in the playoff in 2020 at linebacker, corner, they don't see the field. How do I know that? Because one of Notre Dame's starting corners just transferred out because he wasn't going to see the field.
Yep.
So, no, we should not be lowering the bar. Well, but if they play that team, okay, whatever. No, that should not be. Do I think they should? If you don't beat Georgia, Freeman ain't the guy. No, I'm not saying that. No. But yes, I expect you to at least be competitive in that game.
Right. It can't be 30-3 or something we've seen in the past, right? Like that's
if they go into a game like that, Ryan, and it's a 4-quarter game and they lose by 10, and it's clear that Georgia's the better team. Am I going to be upset about that? I'm disappointed.
Sure.
But I'm going to be kind of like, Kirby's in year whatever, and Freeman's not quite there yet. But no, to get whipped, no, should not be that way. Absolutely not be that way. So 11 wins, playoff berth, playoff victory, competitive loss, if there's there.
Yeah.
Now, of course, do I think Notre Dame's capable of making a run to win a championship? I do. I do, however, think they need at least one break to go their way in the postseason. And that meaning whoever the worst matchup might be, somebody like that gets knocked off. Somebody else knocks out Texas. Somebody else knocks out Georgia or Oregon or whoever we would perceive at the time to be it's not a matchup I'm looking forward to, right? Yep. That would be nice. It makes it a little easier.
Well, just having for Michigan.
Yes.
Just having for Michigan. I mean, I think they probably maybe still beat Texas, but I think Texas would have been a more difficult game than Washington, obviously.
Well, and I think Georgia would have been a more difficult game for them than Bama if Bama doesn't beat Georgia. I don't think it's a given that Georgia beats Bama, though. I mean, beats Michigan, though. I think people disrespect Michigan's team last year a little bit.
Yeah.
And could Georgia have beat them? Sure.
Yeah.
But it would have been a competitive game. This notion that, they'd have killed Michigan. No, they wouldn't have. This wasn't 2021 Michigan, and it wasn't 2021 Georgia. Yeah. And I said this all year. Georgia was really good last year. They weren't what people made them out to be. They had a schedule that allowed them to kind of be 12-0 because there was nobody on their schedule could even. The first time Georgia played a team that could somewhat match them talent-wise, they got beat, in my opinion. But that would have been a heck of a game. I still think Michigan would have had a shot to win.
Yeah, would have a shot.
But that's where I'm. And if Michigan can beat Bama and Washington and teams like that, then Notre Dame should be able to play with Georgia, 100%. I'm tired of those. Let's settle for just getting there. No, those times are done, man. Here's the thing.
Notre Dame's literally been there before. They've been in national championships and lost.
Yeah.
I'm tired of that.
You and I don't care for Brian Kelly as a human being, correct?
Yeah.
We really like Marcus Freeman as a human being, correct?
Correct.
None of that should matter when we're talking about what the standard is. And if it wasn't okay for Brian Kelly to get whooped in those games, then it shouldn't be okay for Marcus Freeman to get whooped in those games. Now, maybe if in 2022 they'd have played out of their minds in the regular season and beat Marshall and beat Stanford and then beat USC and then somehow get in the postseason in 2022 and have to play that Georgia team in round one and they get smacked, I'd have understood that because that team wasn't there yet. They played
Right.
out of their minds to get there. You're in year 3 now. That's gone. No more of that. This team should compete. And there's barring crazy injuries going into that game, I'm done with that stuff. I'm done with that lowering the standard stuff. This is Notre Dame, man. This is Notre Dame. This is a good one from Brandon K. Ryan. Last couple, we're going to get out of here.
Okay. Brandon said, name the one player whose breakout would make the biggest impact on the team. I always just keep going to Viper, man. Like I need one of the Vipers to really take a massive step forward, because the way I look at it is I expect at least one of the safeties to be great, and Xavier Watts. I expect the corners, as long as Benjamin Morrison gets back, to be very good units. I expect the linebackers, although they might make a couple mistakes, I expect them to be very talented, and I actually think they're going to be very good. Defensive tackles, I think, could be one of the best pairings in college football next year. RJ Oben should be a very disruptive player at big ends, more than likely. The one spot on defense that I say that could take the unit from a great unit to an elite unit is if they have a legit sack artist at Viper, right? So that could be Jordan Botelho, that could be Boubacar Traore, whoever that ends up being. I think that could really transform your team, because with an offense that should be better, Notre Dame has this year, that should be able to score more consistently and probably put your team in front a lot more, increasing that pass rush productivity and the ability to finish, I think would be absolutely astounding for Notre Dame and be pivotal for Notre Dame. So give me Viper, one of the Vipers, whether it's Botelho, we keep holding on for hope, or it's Boubacar Traore becoming that dude as a sophomore, as a pass rush specialist that has 8 or 9 sacks. Give me one of those guys to take a massive step forward. I think that defense is elite.
Ryan, defensively, I don't even think there's an argument to make there. I don't. I like you. Even if Morrison's out, there's a lot of teams that would love to have Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey as their starting corners. Like they're going to be Rod Hurd, Adon Schuler. They're going to be fine at safety. Linebacker, they're going to be young, but they're going to be super athletic and talented. D tackle, you have great starters. You have depth now. Big end, you've got Josh Burnham, also Bryce Young. It really comes down to Viper. Can that position? And even Ryan, even if it's not one guy, if it's like Junior has 6 or 7 sacks and Botelho has 5 or 6 sacks and Junior Tuilamaka can give us a couple, like even if it's like we're just as a tandem, they're just really good, or if it's just one guy, I'm Viper. I think you nailed not saying Boubacar, not saying Botelho, a Viper or a couple. That's the position where the breakout have the biggest impact. Let's do offense, Ryan, and I'm gonna do this one on offense. And because I've thought a lot about this. I've thought about one of the running backs. I've thought about Jaden Greathouse, and I kind of expect Greathouse to break out. There's one of 3 players, to me, has to break out to have the biggest bigger than one of the running backs, bigger than Jaden Greathouse. A breakout season from one of Chris Mitchell, Cam Williams, or Deion Colsey. One of those 3.
Yeah. Chris Mitchell would have been my pick for it. Yeah.
Right. Yep. But you know where I'm going with this, though, Ryan. One of those 3 has to be that guy, because those are the 3 guys that are take the top off the defense players. And if one of those 3 guys has a breakout to where they are a legitimate threat against anybody, now all of a sudden Jaden Greathouse becomes unguardable. Mitchell Evans becomes hard to guard. Your running backs are dynamic. Your quarterback's more impactful. If one of those guys can break out and be a legitimate, we have to protect the top. As a defensive coordinator, if I have a guy that you have to worry about every time the ball snap can take the top off of your defense, it changes how you defend me. It changes how you defend my run game. It changes how you're going to defend how I use Jaden Greathouse. It changes how you're going to defend how I use Mitchell Evans. It just does. Like not a guy that can occasionally take a ball 50 yards, but I'm talking about a guy that every time the ball snap, he could have 4 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns and completely change the game, right? If you don't defend him correctly. Like, to me, that player, and you could throw KK Smith into there. You could throw Bo Collins. As potential options. Those are the 3 guys to me that make the most sense. If one of those 3 step up, and I went in that order particularly because I still love the idea of a Z being that guy. If one of the Z's is that guy, that could be Mitchell or Cam Williams. That would be the most impactful breakout. Because if if Riley Leonard just repeats what he did in 2022 and Greathouse does one of those receivers breaks out, then I don't need Riley Leonard to be much better than he was in 20. So I don't need a breakout per se. You know what I'm saying? That's what kind of, and I thought about, Charles Jagasaw maybe, but I really think one of those those deep speed receivers breaking out would be the one from the outside.
Yeah.
That would be the thing that would have the biggest impact. Ryan, what are your thoughts? Who would that be? Who would that be for you? What would be the breakout for you that would have the biggest impact?
Chris Mitchell was the first guy that popped in my head even before you started listening to players, because I think that right now I would love if Cam was that guy in 2024, right? But he's still a freshman. He's still a true freshman. I think there's still going to be a maturation process that needs to happen, obviously, right? Chris Mitchell's a 6-year senior, and he's coming off a season where he was that guy for an offense. Now it was Florida International compared to now playing at University of Notre Dame, which is a big jump, obviously, but we saw a little bit of it in the blue gold game, right? We saw him being able to stretch off of a double move and be able to create explosive play in that game. I know that you saw it during practice, during the spring practice as well. So I really think that if he is able to be that field stretcher, because the way I look at it is, I think that you have a little bit more known commodities. I know that Jaden Greathouse is still expected to take a massive jump compared to what he did as a freshman, but I still feel more comfortable with what I've heard of Jaden this offseason to be that short to intermediate separator, big slots. Mitchell Evans, when he comes back, is going to be a weapon in the middle of the field with his size, right? But you don't really have a guy that's dependable in the passing game right now that you know of for sure. Even Jaden Thomas, you could throw him because Jaden Thomas is productive when he plays, but he's that same guy. Like, he's a short intermediate separator.
4
with
catches,
size.
50 yards every game. Yep.
And knowing that commodity, you have guys that can affect a certain level of the field. But the problem with the team last year, the problem with the team the last couple of years, is everything is just so reduced. Everything is just so hard too often for Notre Dame. You're running against heavy boxes. You're throwing a lot of contested catches. You're throwing balls into tighter windows because safeties can squat on you. Linebackers don't have to be threatened by you. Corners can squat. Like, all these guys, they don't have to feel threatened. If you can get a guy that can create something deep and create and open things up, that makes things easier for Jaden Greathouse. That makes things easier for Mitchell Evans. That makes it easier for the running backs coming out of the backfield. So it would be Chris Mitchell for me. 6-year senior, averaged a big yard per catch last year. Sounds like he's having a really good offseason, being able to stretch the field. 4.3 speed, you can't emulate that, man. Either you have it or you don't. And I think that he would open up the field tremendously.
I agree. We're getting close. Chief Brody, Ryan, I'm going to read this one. I want to get your thoughts. Over under 2.5 playoff wins in the next 3 seasons.
Over. Yes. That's the expectation, Chief. Like, we just talked about it, right? Like, you need to win one this year, potentially.
1 a year.
So over the next 3 years, I mean, you're just going to get over that. I mean, hopefully they do that this year. Like, hopefully we go over this year. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, absolutely over the next 3 years. That would be unacceptable if it was under, in my opinion.
They should, at the very least, the next 3 years, have a year they get in and win 1, have a year they get in and win 2, and then a year where they either don't get in because they're young or get in and lose in the first round because they're young. But very minimum, the standard for Notre Dame moving forward should be get in and win 1, minimum standard, which to me would put them over, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Because again, too, is like when I think of 25 and 26, Ryan, after Riley Leonard leaves, I mean, look, I didn't know who the heck Riley Leonard was until Ryan pointed him out to me. We're Riley Leonard guys. But with all due respect, when I think of what this team could be in the future with CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie, if they hit their peak, it's like, this shouldn't slow down at all. No. You know what I mean? Like, this thing should keep rolling. And I would argue that those guys.
Brian Kelly's here. Brian Kelly would he be delving on the negativity? We don't have this. We don't have that.
Yes,
kill that, man.
True. We only have 3. We only have 2 4-4 running backs. We don't have enough.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. And maybe you'll get let down, guys. But I would rather be the optimist that strives for the standard than the guy that's like, oh, you know what? Nope. 2 years from now, it's gonna be tough, man. Georgia, they're good. Like, no duh, they're good.
Here's a good one, Ryan. The last 3 right here. Andre Tonsel.
Andre Thompson said, best breakfast someone made for you and by you.
Made for me, Ryan. My grandma makes she'll take potatoes and like cut them up in pieces and put them in a cast iron skillet. And I do not know how to cook with a cast iron skillet. Nor do I know how to clean one. and then she'll just like pour eggs into it and like make. And I've tried to recreate it. No, it's like, but
it's a skillet, right? Like a skillet.
Kinda, but it's so good. I've tried to remake it. Angela's tried to remake it. Angela comes closer than I do. But maybe it's just my grandma made it. It's like always my favorite thing. When she comes in town and makes it, it's like it's always better than what it is before in the other way. But that would be the best one. Best I've ever made for me. I make really good French toast. Okay. I love my French toast. That would be mine.
Love it.
French toast and bacon.
Not every, but there are some holidays that we have. I'm sure it will probably be one for Mother's Day because I think we're doing a little bit of a brunch action on Sunday, right? But my sister-in-law makes a quiche, and it's usually sausage, spinach, and some type of cheese, and it is delicious. I actually kind of beg her for it. It's like a fake flaky crust type of thing. I'm down for that all the time. Myself, I do all the cooking in my house, so I feel like I make a lot of things pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I make French toast, pancakes. So like in my household, I know pancakes are a really rudimentary and very easy thing for a lot of people, but I have to make them from scratch because my family is my wife is gluten-free and my daughter has a little bit of some stomach stuff too. So we have to do the oat flour, and Juliet's got a little bit of a gluten intolerance. She's not allergic or whatever, but like she has an intolerance. But Caitlin doesn't. She's gluten-free completely. So got to make pancakes from scratch, man.
I was going to remind you, Ryan. I use King Arthur flour. It's a great flour. They have a gluten-free version that's really good because Angela has a friend of hers who's gluten-free, so I had to get some to make bread for them. But it's really, really good. Very, very good.
Yeah, I've experimented with a few different types of gluten-free. They have a gluten-free all-purpose. I've used oat flour. I've used almond flour. Like there's a bunch.
But I do not make good pancakes, Ryan. I don't like you know the things I cook. You know that I'm a good cook. I don't know what it is. I mean, not that they're bad, but I don't make pancakes like. I just don't make pancakes that I love. I'll rather have my French toast over anybody's French toast. Pancakes, I'd much rather go out and have pancakes. I don't know what it is. But I am going to start trying to make some more from scratch, and maybe that'll be better instead of getting like the store-bought crap. So, yeah. So, Robert, I'll ask Brian Kelly's chef what he puts in his pancakes. Jimmy McGill, Ryan, who is your Cole Mullins of the 25 class? Let's go off the premise of how I viewed Cole Mullins, someone who everyone may be overlooking and underestimating. So we'll grant that premise. How about that, Ryan?
Yeah.
Who'd be your pick for who's
end that's going to get moved to D tackle at 240 pounds? Oh, okay.
over someone who everyone may be overlooking and underestimating based on how I view and still view Cole Mullins.
Yeah. I like Dom Hulak, man. I keep talking about Dom Hulak in the chat. I think that we are going to be very critical of Dom, especially because of the failure of Viper recruiting and the fact that he's probably going to be a Viper by default now, which is just very unfortunate. But I watched the kid's film and I'm like, he has a nice frame. He's 6'3", he's 225 pounds. I think he's got good length to him as well. And I think he's got a lot of speed and explosiveness on the second level as well. So he might not be a finished product, but like I see building blocks to being a good player on the next level. It's just unfortunate that I think how he was sold to us and how he was sold in general originally as the money backer, I really like the opportunity of that and the potential of that. Him as a Viper, I still think he could do it, but like I am a little bit underwhelmed the fact that he now has to play Viper because of a failure of a recruiting staff. So yeah,
and why you turned down a Marco Jones to play that position? Yes,
and you could have just had both. One's a Viper, one's a money, and we're good to go. Like I don't understand. Yeah,
and honestly, you could even have them kind of both bring them in and say, "Hey, whichever one of you is most comfortable with the other." Because like I could see Marco doing some of that stuff as well. Like yeah, I agree with you. Mine's Elijah Burris. I think Elijah Burris is a really good football player. I like Elijah quite a bit. Is he a Will Fuller number one? No, I think he's a very good football player. I see a lot of Torrey Hunter had Torrey not shattered his leg in high school vibes from Elijah Burris. I think he's a very good football player. Defensively, I don't know that I have anyone because like I think Joseph Reif is pretty accurately ranked by a couple people. You know, like Rivals has him as a like 4-star borderline top 250 guy. And I think that's fair. Some people overlook him, but like the difference between like Cole is like nobody respected Cole. Nobody respected Benjamin Morrison. Some people don't rank Joseph Reed very high. Others do. So I think he has, and I think it's fair to have that variance of opinion of him, in my opinion, because I think there's some things that I like Joseph Reed, you know that, but there's also some things where I'm like, have I ever said to you, Ryan, I think you're wrong in your evaluation of Joseph Reed? No, because I'm like, I get it. It's a fair concern, right?
Nobody's right. Nobody's right yet either.
Right.
So yeah.
But you can also look at a guy and say, yeah, we disagree, but I understand why you see what you see. Or why you feel the way that you feel. And sometimes it's like, nope, I don't see it. But sometimes, that's how but I don't think he's unfairly ranked or overlooked or underestimated. I think he's viewed about right. Low floor, high ceiling-ish guy that they hope can be the next Riley Mills. Maybe he can be, maybe he can't. There's some tools to work with. The difference is Riley was a much better prospect at the time coming out.
Right.
Like Riley was a legitimate
too,
top
right?
150. Yes. I mean, he played end, but Riley was 260 plus coming out of high, and he was thick. I mean, you knew that Riley was going to be 290 plus.
Yeah.
I think Joseph Reed might be able to get to that point in time, but he's got a long way to go to get there. But I actually like Joseph Reed a lot, but I'm just not going to pound the table and say this is a top 100 guy. He's a lower floor, high ceiling guy, and I think he's ranked pretty like Matty Augustine. I think Matty Augustine has a very high ceiling. I grade him higher than most of the analysts, but I'm totally fine with the way that they do their rankings, having him as a 3-star. Totally fine with that. Because he's still developing. He just finally started putting on some weight, some things like that. So
I did like his junior film. I thought his junior film was a lot better than a sophomore film.
Much better. Much better.
Yep.
But are you going to sit there now and say, it's fair, honest question, are you going to now look at all you people that rank him as a 3-star, you're idiots and you're way off on this one?
No, I mean, I would tell him that, like, I think that maybe you should give it another, another look, because I think that it might change your mind a little bit. But
which I did,
which,
as you know, Ryan, I did not like Matty Augustine's sophomore film at all, and he was a 3-star when they first started looking at it. Now I have him
didn't like the
a 4-star
film either.
Yeah, but I have him as a 4-star now, Ryan. I do, top 250-ish caliber guy. But I can understand why some people are not, jumping his ranking up just yet. That could change. That could change here soon. But those are the guys I look at. And then the last one, Ryan, I'm going to ask this one of you, Tyler Longbreak, is Noah Grubbs. Every time I see Grubbs, I want to say Ryan. Because I still have
Ryan Grubbs.
Yes.
Yeah. Ryan Grubbs.
Is Noah Grubbs closer to the number 3 quarterback in the class or the number 17 quarterback in the class? And I wonder if you and I are going to have a difference of opinion on this one. So I want to hear your answer on this one first.
Oh, he's definitely closer to number 3 than number 17. Number 17 is very low. Like, that's
even in a deep quarterback class, that's low.
Yeah, because I know there is one platform that actually has him as a 3-star, and I guess this is probably where this question's coming from, because there's one random one that has him as a 3-star recruit, which I don't understand that one at all. Look, as far as Noah Grubbs is concerned, this has always been my perspective on Noah. Noah has really good film right now. He's 6'4". He's 220 pounds. He's got a strong arm. I think he's pretty accurate for the most part. And I think that he has good pocket mechanics. And if you know his coach, Balin Trujillo, he has a history of developing some good high school quarterbacks. So, I mean, he's done a really good job with Noah from a technical perspective. There's no doubt about it. I do think that there's a couple guys that are higher ceiling kids than him overall, right? That's kind of like the one conversation point of Noah versus Brady Hart or Noah versus Ryder Lions or whatever, like those types of kids, right? But I like Noah. I think that Noah is a no doubt top 10 quarterback in the class, like without question. Number 17 is like, that's way too much, right? So yeah, he's a top 100 type of kid, right? Like he's a top 10 quarterback in the class type of kid. Like there's no doubt. Noah Grubbs is a very good player.
Top 10 quarterback in a deep quarterback class.
Oh yeah, it's a great quarterback
class. Right, because top 10 quarterback some years is like, but top 10 quarterback in this class is impressive. The debate really for us, Ryan, is it's never about is this guy good or that guy good. It's like if you have to pick who you prefer, some like Brady more, some like Noah more. And I've been back and forth, and I'm kind of leaning more towards Noah. But next week I may watch some more Brady film and feel Brady. They're both. It's a win-win. To your point, it's not a shocker that the outlet that has him as a 3-star is on 3.
It's on 3, right?
But they have him ranked number 219 in the nation. So because they do that whole, we have guys ranked lower so we can do the reveal and here's the new 4 stars and all that crap. But
I get it.
They have him as a top 250 player. And So, but still top 250s, 219 in the country is still way too low.
Yeah.
I think 247, where they have him ranked at number 165 and ESPN number 190, those are all way too low. Rivals at 44 to me has it about right. To me, he's a top 50-ish guy, which could be 40 to 60-ish type of guy. That's the range for both Brady and Noah for me.
It's kind of strange that he's ranked that low by anyone, because I mean, he seems like the quintessential kid that would be ranked really high, because he's got the size. Obviously, he's 6'4", 220. He had incredible production this past year. He threw 49 touchdowns. And from everyone that we've talked to, and Brian Smith included, he's a really good camp kid as well. Like, he showcases him well in those settings as well. So it's really kind of strange that he's ranked that low by someone.
Agree.
He seems like, doesn't that seem like the profile that would be like a top 100 kid by worse?
Of the guy they continue, they tend to give bigger boosts to, 100%. 100%. Maybe they're waiting to see if he doesn't pick Notre Dame, and then after he picks someone else, they can pump him up and move him up the ranks. But Mr. Roberts, my friend, that is going to do it for today, buddy. Why don't you go ahead and take us out of here?
All right, everyone, appreciate y'all for dropping in. Before you leave the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. It's always very much appreciated. If you're listening to us afterwards on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform. And also, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Please go to borders.irishbreakdown.com. We are doing our absolute best to give you guys as much great content and as much intel as we possibly can. Borders.irishbreakdown.com, very economical and affordable. You guys should go over there. And of course, continue to stay tuned to everything we have building. This is going to be a very busy month of June that is coming up soon. We're going to have the Irish Invasion. We're going to have big recruiting weekends. It is going to be hustle and bustle and very busy. So make sure you stay tapped in. We appreciate you all. That's Brian Driscoll. I'm Ryan Roberts. And we'll catch you all again very, very soon here on the Irish Breakdown podcast.